Chapter 1629. General Budo's eyes widened. He looked at Dustless as if he was looking at a dead person. The dead eyes made everyone feel numb. The atmosphere of the whole ship was extremely depressing. This old fox. Leva of the three beasts saw General Budo and immediately understood the cause and effect. He recalled that it was no wonder that he could board this big ship safely. It was most likely that this strong old man acquiesced. He not only wanted to annihilate the members of the night raid, but also wanted to kill the three beasts. He could even use this opportunity to attack his death and kill Minister Ernest. You who want to destroy the peace of the Empire, this time I will let you try the sanction of my Taigu, Thunder God's wrath. Admalek. General Budo shook his thick arms, and suddenly there was a dull explosion. His arms were wrapped with heavy iron piles, and the strength and power of the attack were bound to increase. Dustless was okay. People like Akame or Bullet would not be able to bear the consequences if they were hit. Bring it on. Turning a deaf ear to General Budo's demonstration, Dustless just hooked his thumb contemptuously. You want to die. Seeing this, Grand General Bud immediately launched a powerful attack. His whole body emitted lightning, crackling and flashing, and collided head-on with a straight light. Boom boom boom. Even because the speed of General Budo's running was too exaggerated, the ship swayed slightly with his steps. Every time the blond old man took a step, the wooden deck would be crushed by him. What an amazing momentum. Is this the combat power of the Empire's strongest general? It's really strong. His death is also at the same level as Budo. Akame was secretly shocked. Unless it was a life-or-death fight, she had no chance to win. Fortunately, we still have Dustless on our side. The situation is 2 against 2, it is fair. Akame's tight face was relieved and she smiled easily. God was always fair. Armament hockey hardening. The white arm suddenly turned dark black, and Wuxia also attacked without the slightest bit of fear. Boom boom boom. Their fists collided and a powerful shock wave spread out. Tatsumi was caught off guard and Akame and the others were forced to retreat. Bang. Scarlet Pupil was fine. After all, her strength was worthy of recognition. On the contrary, Tatsumi was not so lucky. His body was thrown out and smashed on the deck. The pain was unbearable. Although his body was in pain, Tatsumi's mental blow was more serious. Can I really reach that level? Tatsumi was at a loss. For the first time he doubted Bullet. He always felt that this guy was fooling him. After all, Dustless's strength was unreliable. Not to mention fighting with Dustless, he even had to stay far away from the battle. If he was not careful, he would be affected. Swish. Swish. A black shadow roared and attacked Tatsumi, who was in a daze. He was punched again. Bang. Tatsumi, who was suffering unspeakably, spat out a mouthful of blood again. The smell of blood in his mouth assailed his nostrils, and the blood stained his entire gums. You dare to be distracted while fighting with me? Are you an idiot or are you confident in your own strength? Leva's sarcasm was not concealed. He sneered at Tatsumi and sneered unceremoniously, Is Bullet's head rusty? During the time when you joined the night raid, it seems that your mind and spirit have fallen. I really don't know why he values a mediocre person like you. Bullet is really ignorant. Leva curled his lips and unscrupulously despised Tatsumi. Originally he thought that even if Tatsumi's strength was not good, he had some skills. At least he was worthy of others' respect. After testing a few more times, he found that Tatsumi was just an embroidered pillow. No, I understand the reason why Bullet values you. If you think about it carefully, you actually have your own strengths. No wonder Bullet will treat you differently. At this moment, Leva changed the thread of discussion. His eyes flashed with light. He obviously thought of something and took back his words. Really? What's so different about me? Tatsumi was also interested. Originally, he thought that he was an ordinary person and there was nothing special about him. But after listening to Leva, he also understood that he was a person who was pitted by God. Hee, Leva smiled and immediately grinned. You are very lucky. After all, luck is also a part of strength. And there is another thing that I admire very much. You can take a beating. How many times have you been knocked down to the ground and it's difficult for you to stand up? How hard is your skin? After that, Leva showed a look of, I'm not as good as you. You. Tatsumi's face was red and he was angry. Was this an advantage? Was this a compliment to him? This was worse than pointing at his nose and swearing. Humph, there is no need to argue with a small character like you. Glancing at him coldly, Tatsumi also rarely talked nonsense with Leva. This guy was just a lackey of his death. Talking nonsense with him would make him lose his status. Big Brother values me because I have the confidence to defeat Dustless. Tatsumi's mind flashed with brilliance. This might be the fundamental reason. Are you kidding me? Levis sneered more unscrupulously when he heard the words. He stared at Tatsumi with an expression of looking at an idiot and said unceremoniously, "You are just a trash? I have fought with that guy and I know the horror of Dustless." Recalling the process of fighting with Dustless, Levis' face showed a touch of fear. He stared at Tatsumi and said disdainfully, "I can defeat 10 Tatsumi and his death can even defeat 10 of me. And Dustless can easily play tricks on his death. His combat power is 10 times higher than his death. You dare to dream of defeating Dustless? Are you a pig?" Chapter 1630. Are you a pig? This sentence robbed Tatsumi a lot, and his body could not help but tremble. Even if he was not as good as Dustless, he did not need to ridicule him so ruthlessly. It hurt his self-esteem. "General Leva, what you said is too much." Beside Tatsumi, Bullet appeared without warning, and his indifferent eyes were full of annoyance. "Hey Bullet, I know you are wandering around me." Leva smiled indifferently and shrugged helplessly. "Who let you value this incompetent kid so much, and your skill of hiding is excellent. As long as I deliberately ridicule him, you will definitely show up. After all, you are the kind of person who values friendship. I know you too well. You deserve to be my former boss, you really know me well." Bullet just faintly responded, and then glanced at Tatsumi. He saw his decadence and frustration. Seeing his face full of disappointment and loneliness, he did not know what to do. Who asked Liwa to speak the truth? "Let's perform the task first, kill the 3 beastmen." Bullet was too lazy to entangle with Tatsumi's affairs. Everyone had their own fate. As the saying goes, the master can lead the way but it depends on the person. He had done what he could do for Tatsumi. What happened next was Tatsumi's own business. At the same time, there was also a fierce battle in another direction. Boom boom boom. The dazzling lightning all hit Dustless's body. He was hit hard in an instant. His body immediately sunk, and then he could not bear the powerful force and burst open. Did it succeed? General Buddha stared anxiously. Just now for a few minutes he couldn't even catch Dustless's body. Now that he finally caught the real body and destroyed it, he was very excited and happy. Boom boom boom. Dustless's body finally burst open and turned into light all over the sky. If it was put on ordinary people, he would be dead. However, after seeing Dustless's abnormality, General Bude's old face suddenly collapsed. Looking at the golden photons all over the sky, he could not help but burst out. "Damn, what kind of Taigu is this bastard?" General Bude was extremely angry. Dustless was far more troublesome than he imagined. If the opponent was a powerful enemy, there would at least be a possibility of defeating the opponent, but if the opponent was air that you couldn't hit, could you win? I'm giving in to you, but not only are you not grateful, you're insulting me instead. Tiske, using scum to describe you is an insult to this noble word. Dustless, who had just repaired his body, teased in a sarcastic tone. "If you have the guts, fight me fair and square." General Budo clenched his fists and roared. He was particularly miserable because he couldn't hit Dustless's body at all. He was being played around like a clown. "If you dare to fight me head-on, I'll beat you up so badly that even your own mother won't recognize you." General Budo stared at Dustless confidently, hoping to goad Dustless into throwing away his advantage. "Really? Then I will fulfill your wish." Dustless glanced at General Bude, then turned into a thick beam of light and flew out. Lightspeed kick. When he appeared again, he was in front of General Budo, followed by a dazzling beam of light, all of which exploded on General Budo's rough face. Boom boom boom. General Budo's body was swept away by a magnificent flash of light. Dustless kicked him dozens of meters away, smashing through several wooden rooms. If he didn't react in time, this kick would have been enough to kick General Budo into the sea and take a bath with sharks. How is this possible? Could it be that he was giving in to me just now? This kid is not the kind of person who respects the old and loves the young. General Budo's heart was in a perilous situation. He touched his stinging face and immediately grimaced in pain. He couldn't help but feel sad that he wanted to cry but had no tears. General Budo could even feel that his face had been kicked askew. Just now, he was shamelessly boasting that he would beat Dustless to the point that even his own mother wouldn't recognize him. Now the result was the opposite. General Budo was 100% sure that if he returned to the imperial capital, the great emperor wouldn't recognize him. The person who was beaten to the point that even his own mother wouldn't recognize him wasn't Dustless, but General Budo. Phew phew phew. At the same time, a flash of light suddenly appeared behind him. The cold voice made General Budo sweat profusely, and he turned his head stiffly like a robot. Bang bang bang. An iron fist came to his face. General Budo's face suddenly caved in, his nose was directly beaten into a bloody mess, and even disappeared out of thin air. Bang bang. General Budo was blown more than 10 meters away by Dustless's punch. He was lying on the deck half dead, and his faint breathing could still be heard faintly. He was so close to the gate of hell. What kind of monster is that guy? Bullet, who was fighting with Leva, was stunned. His eyes were staring at Dustless in horror. This guy was so horrible that he could cripple a general with one punch and one kick. Sure enough, it's almost the same as I predicted. The strength of this guy is at least 10 times more than Master Esteth. Leva also had a cold expression. This scene was too incredible. One punch and one kick to kill one of the strongest in the Empire. It was enough to dislocate people's jaws. Can I really surpass this kind of monster? Tatsumi couldn't bear the blow and took the initiative to cover his eyes. If he continued to watch this scene, he would have trouble sleeping and eating. Such a nightmare enemy could be called a godlike existence. So powerful. Akame's eyes were full of brilliance. She deeply admired Dustless's overwhelming strength. After all, it was a world where the strong were respected. A person who could kill a general in seconds was definitely more popular than the weak. Chapter 1631. Damn it, no wonder that his death bowed to me. It turned out that all the reasons were for him. Hateful, I should have joined forces with his death to deal with this kid. Looking at the approaching Dustless, General Budo finally gritted his teeth and stood up. Oh, very strong, you can still stand up. Dustless's eyes flashed a ripple and immediately said, but it's a pity. Whoosh. As soon as the voice fell, Dustless's body immediately shone, and the golden beam began to wander again. Hateful. Witnessing such a scene, Grand General Budo complained incessantly. But now that things had come to this, he had no choice but to bite the bullet. Dustless would never let him off, and Grand General Budo wouldn't let Dustless off either. In the end, it was the same, there was no possibility of reconciliation. Boom. The silver light echoed between heaven and earth. General Budo, who had been devastated, had to burst out the last strength to deal with it. He turned into a lightning storm and attacked. Whoosh. General Budo waved his arms with all his might. Light balls, about the size of a human head, shot out from his arms one after another, densely rolling towards Dustless. One after another, the number was endless and each of them was extraordinary. Boom. Dustless did not stop and continued to walk leisurely. The silver energy ball exploded on his body, but in any case, Dustless did not suffer any harm, similar to the transparent people. Kakaka. The violent explosion caused the deck of the ship to collapse, and the whole ship had a tendency to tilt, but Grand General Budo still attacked Dustless with all his might. There was no sign of stopping and he wanted to completely destroy it. As the sun set, suddenly he turned his head and swept to the distant crimson sky. The fiery red sun had set over the mountain, and unknowingly, the darkness had quietly come. Let's stop here. Dustless gradually lost interest in continuing the entertainment, and his mind waned. Looking at the crazy General Budo, his body burst into golden light, and a flash swept in front of him. Let me teach you how to use lightning, Raitan, 1,000 birds. The silver dazzling thunder roared out and went straight to General Budo's internal organs. Because the flash was too dazzling, looking at each other could make people dizzy. General Budo was no exception. Even if he was aware of Dustless's attack, he could only close his eyes helplessly. In particular, the thousands of thunder made him even more frightened. Puchi. The flash and thousands of birds were all extinguished, and the world was very quiet at this moment, but everyone's eyes were on General Budo. Victory and defeat has been decided. Staring at General Budo's pale face, Dustless was unusually calm. Following his line of sight, one could see that General Budo had a bloody hole in his chest. Papa. Not only that, but inside General Budo's abdomen, there was also crackling lightning, burning his internal organs, mercilessly destroying all the organs of his body. Sensing the rapid loss of his life force, Grand General Budo closed his eyes in despair, as if he had already admitted defeat. If you knew this would happen, you wouldn't have done it. Looking at General Budo regretfully, since he knew this would happen, he shouldn't have been so arrogant. If he had kept a low profile, this wouldn't have happened. All of this was General Budo asking for humiliation. Goodbye. Patting the dust off his body, Dustless was about to leave, but suddenly he found a thick arm grabbing him, powerful and extremely strong, and forcibly pulled back Dustless, who wanted to leave. Raising his head to look at the instigator, Dustless shockingly discovered that it was Grand General Buddha. This old guy opened his eyes again, and showed an extremely crazy and cunning expression. Ah! You've been fooled. General Budo's unusually proud laughter resounded through the boundless night sky. He quickly took out a special needle and stabbed it into his neck without hesitation. An unknown liquid flowed down the pillow into General Budo's body. You're too strong, let me strengthen you first. A large number of blue veins appeared on his neck. General Budo looked at Dustless with a ferocious expression. At this moment, Dustless was like a little lamb, extremely weak in the eyes of General Budo. Very surprised, right? General Budo laughed sinisterly. Very surprised indeed. Dustless heard this and fixed his eyes on General Budo, sighing, I thought you were a person who disdained to play tricks, but I didn't expect that I was wrong. Dustless confessed to this without concealing anything. It could be considered that he had suffered a setback. After all, although he was powerful, it was also impossible to see through everyone's thoughts. So what if you caught me? You think you can still turn the tables? Looking at General Budo's destroyed organs, Dustless said with pity, Now you're just relying on medicine. Of course I still have things to do. That is to take you down with me. General Budo roared. Pa pa pa. At the same time the extinguished Taigu once again emitted lightning. All rushed to Dustless's body. He suddenly looked like a lightning man. His whole body was emitting huge thunder and lightning. Although the thunder and lightning can't hurt you, there's still a fatal place. Looking at Dustless, who was swallowed by lightning, General Budo loosened his right arm and laughed with victory in his hand. You should be weak now, have no strength to move, right? Thunder and lightning can paralyze you. Puchi. Puchi. General Budo's voice just fell, two lights flashed, Dustless waved the sword as if nothing happened. The sharp edge cut off General Budo's arms one after another. Boom. The bloody arms fell to the ground, General Budo collapsed and his mind was blank. You want to paralyze me with your half-baked lightning? Are you an idiot? Chapter 1632. Hearing Dustless's ridicule, General Budo did not attack back this time. Perhaps he had accepted this cruel fact in his heart. Dustless was an existence that he looked up to. Ha! General Budo suddenly smiled stupidly. Even if his arms were cut off by Dustless, he did not feel the slightest pain. His heart was desperate and numb. Go to hell with me. General Budo said crazily. At the same time, his Taigu broke out a destructive super thunder and lightning. Strangely, it did not attack Dustless but gathered on General Budo's body. Boom boom boom. The void that was still quiet suddenly became violent, the lightning surged, the thick silver thunder dragon turned over in the clouds. The scene was amazing. It turns out that you want to drag me to hell with you? Dustless stared at the thunder and lightning that overflowed from General Budo's body, and he suddenly understood something. Boom boom boom. The violent thunder and lightning fell from the sky, the unparalleled destructive power, the autumn wind swept the fallen leaves, and the cruelly destroyed the sailing ship. Phew phew phew. Dustless's body flashed suddenly. He took the lead to rush to the front of Akame, grasped Akame's body tightly, and immediately threw her into the water without hesitation. Boom boom boom. The next second, the whole ship was attacked by lightning. It burned with a thick flame in an instant. The ship of hundreds of meters turned into a fire ship. Dustless. Akame, who poked her head out from the bottom of the water, was full of worry. At the same time she was unwilling to feel frustrated. She secretly clenched her fists. After all, she was still too weak. Dustless saved her again. He turned himself into a thunder and electromagnetic field, attracting the thunder and lightning in the sky. Does Budo still have such a powerful trick? He is really cunning. Isteth, who stood at the port, looked far away, looking at the burning ship and the thunder elemental power in the distant void. She vaguely guessed that the initiator was General Budo. Turning oneself into a thunder and electromagnetic field, attracting the power hovering in the sky to execute heavenly punishment, this was one of the strongest moves of General Budo. At the same time, it was also the move he used to perish together with Dustless. What a pity. At this moment, the frivolous voice of a young man came from the flaming ship. Looking closely, it was the sloppy Dustless. He was dressed in bright clothes, his face was rosy, and his expression was joyful. He didn't look like he was about to receive divine punishment at all. Instead, he looked as excited as if he was going on a vacation. Puchi. Looking at the unscathed Dustless, General Budo vomited blood and fell to the ground. Looking at his unwilling expression, he was probably angered to death by Dustless. TSK. Now that this guy has been dealt with, it's Bullet's turn. He's the main dish this time. With a bloodthirsty smile on his face, Dustless strolled to the place where Bullet and Leva were fighting. His devilish smile made people shudder. He threw Scarlet Pupil out not only to save her, but also to create a good environment to kill Bullet. As the best villain, not only did he have to trap the enemy, but he also had to scheme against his own people. Even his teammates were no exception. Anyone who defied Dustless's will would definitely die. Damn it. That old man even wants to kill me. The place where Leva and Bullet were fighting had already been reduced to ruins. The surroundings were burning with a blazing sea of fire. Both Leva and Bullet were extremely miserable. Before the two of them started fighting, they were attacked by General Bullet, who summoned thunder and lightning. That terrifying heavenly punishment attack was too frightening. Even if the two of them didn't die, they were seriously injured by the lightning. Bullet's body was even emitting a burnt smell. Leva wasn't any better. Tatsumi, it's yours from now on. Handing the machete that summoned the ghost haunt armor to Tatsumi, Bullet showed a painful expression. The thunder and lightning attack did seriously injure him. Brother, you. Although Tatsumi was quite excited looking at Bullet's painful expression, he still couldn't hold back the sadness in his heart. Idiot, I'm not dead yet. It's not too late to cry for me when I'm dead. Bullet laughed and scolded, you take ghost haunt back temporarily. I'll hold this guy back. No, brother, Puff. Bullet didn't give Tatsumi a chance to speak. He directly kicked Tatsumi out of the sea of fire. In the world of fire, only Bullet and Leva were left. Just great, Bullet. Sacrificing yourself for others? Your style is really not like an assassin. Leva stood up and said, do you want to die with me? Of course not, I will leave after killing you. Bullet shook his head. He didn't plan to die now. He let Tatsumi take away ghost haunt, because Bullet didn't have extra strength to use it in his current state, so it was better to let Tatsumi take it away. Yo, Bullet. At this moment, a voice that surprised Bullet suddenly sounded. Looking at the source, it was Dustless, who walked over with a smile. You're not dead? Bullet said in surprise. It was already a miracle that he was still alive after suffering such a terrifying attack, and Dustless was completely unscathed right now. Of course. Buddha, on the other hand, is deader than dead. Dustless walked to Bullet harmlessly, and a meaningful smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Bullet, I have something to tell you. Is it important? Bullet frowned when he heard the words and then asked, just say it. You're so generous. Dustless smiled, and immediately a cold light flashed in his eyes. His right arm penetrated Bullet's heart like a blade. You have to hinder me from killing Tatsumi? Can you please die? Chapter 1633. This sudden scene not only shocked Bullet, but also Leva, the great enemy, was dumbfounded and at a loss. Aren't these two teammates colluding with each other? Isn't everyone in the night raid loving each other? How could there be such a good show of killing each other? How dare this guy? How dare he? How dare he? Bullet kept repeating this sentence, and his stunned eyes gave people the illusion that he was dreaming. Dustless didn't come to save him, but directly killed him. Pucci, Dustless's strength went deeper, Bullet's body was badly mutilated, and the tingling pain spread all over his body. Bullet's body was covered with cold sweat, and his face was suddenly as pale as blood. He clenched his fists tightly and he had to loosen them. Bullet had no extra strength to continue fighting with Dustless. Gee. Looking around, Dustless tried to find the trace of Tatsumi, but he helplessly found that the kid had disappeared in advance, and he probably escaped again. That kid's luck is pretty good. He always has the foresight to slip away in advance. However, being able to get rid of you this time is also a pleasant surprise. Bullet, I thought you would also run away. Dustless teased with a playful tone, looking at Bullet, who was in pain. The depths of his eyes were as cold as ice, without a trace of pity or sympathy. The road is his own choice, no one forced him, and he will pay the price if he goes wrong. Dustless? The boss will not let you go. Bullet's face darkened as he roared. He could still feel at ease if he had died in the hands of the enemy. After all, he had died in battle. However, he had been killed by his own people for no reason. How could this be? Bullet's heart was extremely depressed. Gee, I'm really sorry. No one knows about this. Pointing to Riva, Dustless said with a smile. Bullet and Riva, one of the three beasts, fell after the battle, and I, Uchiha Dustless, bravely saved him. In the end, although I didn't save Bullet, I helped you to avenge him and killed Riva. What do you think of this script? Were you moved to tears when you heard that? As his voice fell, both Riva and Bullet couldn't hold back, and the two of them were seriously injured by Supreme General Budo before, and as a result they couldn't hold back their blood. You despicable shameless villain. The two of them stared at Dustless angrily. This guy's ability to make up a story is superb. He pushed all the blame and responsibility to Riva and Bullet, and Dustless himself was the savior. This gorgeous script may make Najenda reward Dustless, the culprit. Don't look at me with this kind of eyes that want to tear me into pieces. I said before, I didn't intend to kill you, but you had to collude with Tatsumi. If you want to blame, you can only blame your naivety and ignorance. Don't worry, Tatsumi will meet you soon. Pucci. Dustless increased his strength and instantly squeezed Bullet's heart. Oh. After letting out an extremely painful howl, Bullet's eyes dimmed as he fell to the ground. His face was filled with desolation and unwillingness. His eyes had completely darkened and were extremely empty and gloomy. Tatsumi will definitely avenge me. Bullet unconsciously muttered to himself. He was close to sleep, but in fact he was full of hesitation. Compared with Dustless, Tatsumi was simply a slag. It was more appropriate to call him Slag Rice. Next, it's you. Glancing at the fallen Bullet, Dustless's gaze then shifted to Leva. The latter immediately retreated a few steps in fear. This guy was really too evil. It was understandable that he was ruthless to the enemy, but he was also so cruel to his own people. Dustless's heresy refreshed Riva's understanding. Even Esteth trusted her own people very much, but this guy could kill his companions at will. His means were worse than Esteth's. Go to hell. However, it was useless to escape. Dustless flashed and rushed in front of him. A cold light left a shocking wound on Riva's body. Plop. Although Riva was unwilling, he also fell to the ground, and his vitality accelerated. In a trance, he had seen the Grim Reaper with a sickle coming to take his life. I'm really merciful. Dustless muttered to himself. His indifferent face didn't show the slightest bit of guilt or self-blame. He had once given Bullet a chance, but Bullet insisted on going against him and brought disgrace upon himself. Riva tried his best to open his eyes and stared at Dustless, who was close at hand. Finally he whispered, You crazy demon, Esteth will definitely defeat you. Demon? Dustless revealed a puzzled expression when he heard that. He pretended to be sorrowful and said, I let you two good brothers die together. Furthermore, it's still going to hell hand in hand. You two should thank me. My behavior is no different from that of an angel. Puff. In the end, Leva couldn't bear the blow and choked with sobs for the rest of his life. Soon after, he was angered to death. If angels were as black-bellied and callous as Dustless, the entire human race might have been destroyed countless years ago. Boom boom boom. The fire continued to burn and everyone on the ship panicked. They were like headless flies, but they were already at the end of their rope. Now that the entire ship was on fire and they were in the middle of the ocean, there was only one outcome for these people: death. The mission is completed, we can retreat. Although Tatsumi's record is less, we have General Butte, which is barely good. Chapter 1634. Time flew by, and 3 days later the news of Bullet's death spread throughout the night raid. Everyone was quite sad. After all, they had spent a long time with Bullet. The result was exactly the same as Dustless's plan. Leva, one of the three beasts, took all the responsibility, and Dustless himself was the superhero of annihilating the enemy. Dustless put all the merits on his head shamelessly. However, this was not the most important thing. The key was that Boss Najenda and other members of the night raid were convinced by Dustless's answer, and they even specially gave him quite a generous reward. If Bullet in the underworld knew all this, he would be so angry that he would climb out of the coffin. Damn, no wonder I didn't find the set of ugly god armor, Ghost Haunt. It turned out that Tatsumi took it away, this damn kid. Every time he escapes, his luck is too good. At the base of the night raid, looking at Tatsumi, who was training hard outside the window, Dustless's complaints about him multiplied. This kid's luck was really too good. Now Tatsumi had put on Ghost Haunt, and trained like Bullet, even crazier than Bullet. After all, Bullet's death was caused by his cowardice. Who? Boss Najenda knocked on the table, then smoked leisurely and then said softly, Ghost Haunt is Bullet's relic, and at the same time Bullet took the initiative to give it to Tatsumi. I intend to respect Bullet's choice. The next user of Ghost Haunt, Tatsumi. I know Bullet originally valued Tatsumi, and it's reasonable to give it to him. Dustless didn't refute when he heard the words. This was what he expected. The only thing worth complaining about was that Tatsumi and Bullet's relationship was too good. It seemed that he was the one who took advantage of Bullet every time. Cough cough cough. Everyone be quiet, I have another important emergency to announce. Nagenda's expression suddenly became serious and serious. It's a good thing to kill General Bullet this time. It's an unexpected surprise. Dustless should record it. I agree. Akame was the first to stand up and nod in agreement. If it weren't for Dustless, she might have been killed by General Bude's exaggerated move. Therefore Akame was grateful to Dustless. This dissolute fellow. Mine saw Akame's affectionate and grateful eyes, and immediately felt a threat. She also looked at Dustless, but it was the kind of scorching and extremely unpleasant. Damn it, why is there such a huge gap between us? How many days has it been since this kid started his night raid? She actually won the attention of mine and Akame at the same time? I am the elder of the night raid, why is my agenda like a stone? Even Leonette also treats Dustless differently, including Hill. Dustless once saved her life. Dustless also seems to trust Dustless very much. Damn it, this guy is an unprecedented crisis for me. Lubbock saw such a scene, he wanted to cry but had no tears. He stared at Dustless with jealousy. If he didn't do well, his agenda would be taken by this kid first. I heard that Isdeth recently set up a special force. The members are the same Taiga users as you. If I am right, they are all used against us. Nagenda was cautious and her light purple eyes were full of tension. She subconsciously touched the destroyed eyes and the mechanical arm. The fear that Isdeth brought to her was unforgettable. Listen clearly, according to the recent gossip, this special police department is called Jaegers. Jaegers? An organization that specializes in hunting people. This name is really arrogant. Leonette stood up and snorted. She seemed to be very dissatisfied with Isdeth's arrogance. Dustless did not speak. He sat aside calmly and no one knew what he was thinking. The guy Celia Ubiquitas was killed by me. I am afraid that one of the original members is missing now. In the original work, Celia Ubiquitas of the Guards was also one of them and she even killed Hill. But now, the development of the situation was forcefully rewritten by Dustless. This time her luck wasn't very good. She was eliminated by Dustless in advance. On the contrary, Hill was still alive and well. All in all, everyone should be a little more careful recently. Try to avoid confronting Isdeth head-on. I know her temperament better, so we can consume her slowly. The boss Nagenda's wise order, her bright eyes were quite far-sighted. Although this was a passive tactic, Isdeth was like a maggot to her, and the shadow in her heart could never be removed. Boss Bullet has fallen. Do we need to add members? Hill, who was a natural airhead, stared at Bullet's former position and couldn't help but suggest, if there is one less person, the efficiency of our task will be greatly reduced, and it will affect Ken in the future. Hill is right, it's also right to find a new person to join. After all, Bullet's position needs to be replaced by others. Now Tatsumi has the set of armor, Haunted. With his ability, it is impossible to surpass Bullet in a short time. Hey, if Bullet could hold on for a while, I could save him. Wu Qin said guiltily in a self-blaming tone. You tried your best, don't mind Dustless. Patting Dustless's shoulder, Nagenda showed a regretful and disappointed expression. If Bullet's spirit is in heaven, he will thank you. Spirit? Bullshit. You can't have it. If there is, that kid must curse me to death. Dustless smiled, but he complained in his heart. Chapter 1635. Dustless still remembered the eyes of Bullet who died with grievances. It was better for the soul of that kind of person to dissipate. It was not a good thing to be remembered by a ghost all day long. During the time when I am away, Scarlet Pupil will temporarily act as the boss. After sorting out the package that had been prepared, Nagenda was about to leave. Finally, she did not forget to ask, "Do you have any questions? During this time, don't go out at will." Boss, don't worry, we are not children. Everyone has the consciousness of being an assassin. We will not avenge Bullet temporarily. Leonie leaned lazily on the chair with a pleasant expression. At the same time, she did not forget to glance out of the window, but she found that Tatsumi, who was still training, suddenly disappeared. Where is Tatsumi? After a few seconds of hesitation, Leonie's tone increased several times. Tatsumi? These words made everyone's face change greatly. Everyone looked at the place where Tatsumi and Bullet usually trained. The scene in front of them made everyone frown deeply. They didn't know when, but the place was empty. Tatsumi disappeared. Before the first wave subsides, another wave rises. Tatsumi is probably going to avenge Bullet. Dustless explained in a very positive tone. Dustless had previously pushed all the blame of Bullet's death to Leva of the Three Beasts. And who was the boss of the Three Beasts? After General Bullet was killed, there was only one strongest sadist general left in the Empire, his death. I guess Tatsumi went to trouble his death. Scarlet Pupil's cheeks also showed a rare displeasure. Although she was quite optimistic about Tatsumi, she couldn't help but complain at the moment. Night Raid was an assassin organization. Sometimes, it was inevitable that members would be killed. The members must be calm, but Tatsumi was too willful. What he did was completely opposite to the assassin's philosophy. I guess that the kid would not be quiet. I originally planned to let you keep an eye on him. Najenda put down the package that she picked up again. She looked helpless and had a headache. Although she could understand Tatsumi's pain as a professional assassin, she must not be controlled by her own emotions. Absolute rationality was necessary. That idiot Tatsumi, I'm afraid his death is waiting for him to take the bait. I heard that his death has recently organized a civic contest. At that time, his death will personally participate. It is estimated that she will use herself as bait to lure the members of the Night Raid. If Tatsumi is caught, we can use his mouth to get the news of our base. Touching his chin, Dustless showed a gloating smile. With him in the night attack it would be fine. No matter what, Tatsumi the little boy was going to be unlucky. If he was caught by his death he would be severely tortured. It would be best if his death could kill Tatsumi, who was an eyesore. I suggest we change our base immediately. Dustless was bored and knocked on the table, making the sound of dong dong. He analyzed, everyone knows the situation of his death. Tatsumi may be able to defeat her in the future, but now he is just sending himself to his death. And his death is the sadist general. She is good at torturing people. If Tatsumi is caught, who knows whether he can withstand the torture. It is necessary to change the base temporarily. Mine and Gil nodded after hearing the words. Well, let's listen to Dustless's plan and change the base temporarily. Boss Najenda continued, however you guys go to the capital to investigate together. All members of the Night Raid were exposed. Remember to disguise yourselves. If Tatsumi has not implemented the revenge plan, it is best to save him. He is also a member of the Night Raid. We can't leave him alone. When she said this, Najenda did not have much confidence. After all, everyone knew the relationship between Bullet and Tatsumi. Tatsumi hated the culprit's death. Even so, but, the corners of Wu Chen's mouth squirmed and he suddenly interrupted, what if Tatsumi doesn't listen? When he is stubborn even 10 cows can't pull him back. What if the kid doesn't obey our orders? Dustless is right. I know Tatsumi's character. Lubbock also nodded. Everyone got along with each other day and night. Even if they didn't know each other's background, at least they still knew each other's character. This worry was not unreasonable. The relationship between Bullet and Tatsumi is extraordinary. Leonie sighed and followed. She suddenly felt that it was a mistake to pull the naive and optimistic Tatsumi into the Night Raid. If that's the case, Boss Najenda's eyes were cold and said, if that's the case there is no way. We can only kill Tatsumi by ourselves. I hope he can understand our pain. We can't ruin the revolution because of him alone. I'm waiting for you to say that. Dustless's eyes were fierce as if he was possessed by an evil spirit. The Revolutionary Army was not something that Dustless could control. The decaying empire was not a good thing, but there must be factions within the Revolutionary Army. As a result, there must be intrigue. Then the darkness began to sprout at the same time. Anyway, I can use infinite Tsukuyomi to kill this world in the end. All human beings are my nourishment. Dustless smiled calmly. It was extremely terrifying, far more terrifying than the monsters of the Empire. Compared with Dustless, Minister Ernest was simply an angel. At the moment in the imperial capital, as Dustless and others guessed, Tatsumi arrived on time. He also knew that his identity was exposed, so he deliberately disguised himself before sneaking into the imperial capital. Chapter 1636. At the moment, in the luxurious palace of the imperial capital. In a room with an elegant environment, Isteth looked at the members of the Jaeger's police force below with satisfaction. The only regret was that the guard named Celia Ubiquitas had been killed by Dustless. Captain, will someone really attack us in this citizens' contest? Other members of the Jaegers questioned. This person had a handsome face and short blonde hair. His name was Lon. I'm not sure. Anyway, it is boring to hold a battle to pass the time. There are several Taigu, it is the right to choose the right users. Death shrugged her shoulders indifferently. Night raids were all famous rats and only God knew their specific movements. However, according to my estimation, the young man named Tatsumi is a loyal person. Once there is a chance, he will never let me go. Death played with her nails. Her tone was very lazy, but deep in her eyes, there was a bright and strange luster. At the same time, the other members of the special police force, the hunters, also made their appearance. Bowles, Will, Dr. Fashion, and the rest were all there, as well as Scarlet Eye's sister, Black Pupil. The only one missing was Cyril Ubiquitas, who had been killed. Bud was too reckless. If that guy was not reckless and went to look for death to fight with Dustless, he and I may be able to defeat him together. After a while, Death sighed with melancholy. She also had no way to deal with Dustless. Now she could only take one step at a time. The Emperor had ordered her to arrest Dustless again and again, but Death did not have the ability. Even Master Death is not his opponent? Kurome's natural expression was stunned. I have fought with him before and the result. In short, I lost completely. Staring at Black Pupil angrily, Death was very depressed. You can't be so direct even if you want to expose the scars. Speaking of Wuxian, the scene of being washed by Wuxian automatically popped up in her mind. And she was extremely sad to put a collar on herself. The streets that were crowded at ordinary times were deserted at the moment. It was all thanks to Death. She held a citizens' contest which attracted a large number of civilians to watch. Death, the strongest sadist general, was still very popular. The secret night raid base in the imperial capital. I didn't expect there to be such a place. In the secret room, Dustless strolled around with great interest. The night raid logo was clearly hung on the wall, and it was very conspicuous. Leona sat on the sofa and drank beer painfully. She had forgotten about Tatsumi's mission. As for Lubbock, he observed the situation outside through the window. Where are Chi-Tong and the others? Looking around, Dustless asked out of boredom. This mission was of great importance. Not only the three of them participated, but even Akame, Mine and Hill also participated. They're in charge of investigating. Leona said in an unusually lazy tone. As soon as her voice fell, Lubbock's voice sounded. Chi-Tong and the others seemed to have returned. How did they gather information so quickly? There won't be any problems. Gazing far away, Chi-Tong and the others were all wearing black robes. It could not be helped. Thanks to Dustless, now all the members of the night raid were almost exposed. After all, they often fought with the troops of the imperial capital. It was inevitable to be exposed. They should have found some useful information. Dustless bowed his head and said to himself. From Chi-Tong's slightly worried face, he could vaguely see some clues. It must be that Tatsumi had a big problem. It is estimated that Tatsumi signed up for the citizens' contest. After a while, Dustless's eyes flashed a ray of light. The final winner can get the reward of Death and even test some Taigo. This is a good opportunity to get close to Death. If Tatsumi really wants to assassinate Death, then this is the best opportunity. The analysis is reasonable. After thinking carefully, Leona nodded and sighed. Tatsumi is in a hurry to die. Death has countless enemies. She can still be alive, which explains everything. Who knows? Maybe God will give her face and the assassination will succeed. Wu Qin said with a faint smile. At the same time, he looked at the exit of the machine room. Chi-Tong and the others had already appeared in his eyes. Tatsumi participated in the citizens' contest. Sure enough, as Dustless guessed, the news revealed by Chi-Tong was the same as what Dustless predicted. This guy's head is really smart. Leona glanced at Dustless incredibly and immediately frowned. There is news that Death will also observe. Tatsumi's identity is also exposed. If he is caught by Death, our night raid will be completely exposed. Hehe, that's very simple, kill Tatsumi together. Dustless's extremely evil suggestion was surging between his eyebrows. If Tatsumi is really caught, in order to prevent him from leaking the news of our organization, then I will kill him. Mine raised the Taigu pumpkin, and was full of confidence. This world is really mysterious. Dustless saw this and smiled without a trace. Originally, in the original work, the relationship between Tatsumi and Mine developed to the later stage. They were lovers who were envied by others. Now it was good, he instigated them to become strangers. Now Mine wanted to kill Tatsumi, the development of the situation was so wonderful. Chapter 1637. Dustless stared at the impassioned Mine. This guy obviously didn't say it casually. There was a touch of freedom and determination on her cheeks. If Tatsumi was caught and betrayed the night raid, he would be a real traitor. Let's disguise ourselves a little and sneak into the venue. Let's see what Tatsumi is going to do. Looking up at the distant sky in boredom, Dustless was actually full of expectations and curiosity about what Tatsumi would do. At this moment, the special venue for the citizens' martial arts competition was crowded with people. It was difficult to find a suitable place to stand. Tatsumi really knows how to make trouble for people. Also, how can I snipe Tatsumi in such a place? I can't even see the target clearly. Mine, who teamed up with Dustless, complained as she walked. Because she was small and short, she could hardly see the situation outside in the crowd. You are more troublesome than Tatsumi. Dustless suddenly hugged Mine, grabbed her right shoulder and right leg and put Mine on his shoulder to sit. What do you want to do? Molest. Mine was shocked by Dustless's sudden move. She recovered and scolded, "It turns out that you are a pervert. You are so troublesome. I am kind enough to find an open field for you, but you blame me. In this case you can come down." Grabbing Mine's shoulder, Dustless was about to put her down, but this guy was unhappy again. "Do you think you can put me down just because you said so? Do you have any respect for me? Don't move. The view here is the best. If Tatsumi dares to appear, I promise that I can kill him with one shot." Mine slapped Dustless's hand away rudely and groaned, "Although you are lazy, you are very reliable at the critical moment. I will depend on you." "Depend on me?" Hearing the words, Wuxia glanced at Mine, who blushed in surprise. This sentence represented a lot of meanings. He immediately joked, "You don't like me, do you?" "Impossible." A panic flashed in Mine's eyes. She quickly denied it and said proudly, "I fell in love with you when all the men in the world died. I guess you've really fallen for me." Wuxia continued to tease. His goal was to kill all the humans and absorb their life force to reach the level of perfection. The whole world was about to be destroyed. Naturally, Dustless was the only man left. "Speaking of which, you'll be easily discovered if you're so conspicuous." Mine sat on Dustless's head. Although she was disguised, her position was too conspicuous. It was difficult not to notice her. "What's the matter?" Mine curled her lips and asked with an expression of disdain, "What's more, even if the sky falls, you will be there to support it. It's not a big deal. You've changed from the past." Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Since he joined the night raid, the style of the members of the night raid was completely different from before. Before the super fighting power of Dustless, the night raid attacked others at night. Now with the addition of Dustless, almost all of them fought with the enemy head-on. Now let's welcome the last group of contestants. The host, Will, took the microphone and announced loudly that the game had entered the end. The last two contestants stepped onto the stage under everyone's expectant gazes. One of them was tall and sturdy like a magical beast. The other one wore a mask on his head, and his entire body was airtight. Judging from his physique, he was a teenager. "Mind, pay attention to that guy." Pointing to the teenager wearing a mask, Dustless said coldly, "That guy seems to be Tatsumi." "Why are you so sure?" Mine asked in a low voice. She tried to lower her voice, but she was still shocked. Dustless just took a few glances at him. "People who have been killed by me, I naturally won't remember him. But people who have grudges with me, even if he disguised himself, even if he has undergone plastic surgery, he can't escape from my eyes. What's more, what kind of person do you think will wear a mask?" Dustless asked calmly. "What kind of person will wear a mask?" Mine was silent for a few seconds and replied, "People who have done something wrong will be ashamed. Yes, it is because they have done something wrong that they will be afraid. Tatsumi, like us, is a criminal wanted by the Empire. If he wants to participate in the game, he must change his appearance. So I am sure that this person is him, and his body outline is very similar to Tatsumi." Dustless glanced at Tatsumi, then his right eye suddenly changed, the black eye instantly turned into a blue and white eye, Tensigen. His vision became extremely clear, the scene 10 kilometers away could be seen, not to mention Tatsumi, who was close at hand. "Sure enough, it's this kid." After careful observation for more than 10 seconds, Dustless affirmed. Phew phew phew. However, as soon as Dustless's voice fell, Mine shot out a ray of light. Boom boom boom. The violent explosion was not earth-shattering, but at least it scared everyone, and Dustless was the same, looking at Mine stupidly. "Is your head rusty?" Dustless, who came back to his senses, asked loudly. "You can only blame Tatsumi. You want to assassinate his death? If it's that simple, the Empire would have been destroyed. We can notice Tatsumi's disguise, his death will naturally notice it too. If Tatsumi is caught, his death will definitely torture Tatsumi severely. If he can't bear the torture, he will inevitably confess everything. It's best for me to take the opportunity to kill him now. Mine didn't stop. Instead, she fired a few more shots. Although it's a bit far-fetched, there is some truth in it. Touching his nose, Dustless found that he was convinced by Mine. At the same time, Dustless also found that a large number of soldiers flocked to him and Mine, including the members of Jaegers. Chapter 1638. Boom boom boom. All this happened so suddenly that everyone was caught off guard. Looking at the direction where Mine was standing, they didn't expect that she would suddenly attack without saying anything. The killers of the night attack. They are looking down on people more and more. Isdeth stared at the burning fireball in the stadium, and she was silent for a while. Then she said coldly, "Now the rats are fat and they dare to compete with human beings. They are really arrogant. Jaegers, go out." Phew phew phew. As Isdeth's voice fell, all the special police Jaegers were dispatched. Mine and Dustless were the first to be exposed, and they were also the first to be treated kindly by Jaegers. "Ah, are you the Dustless that Isdeth said? On the surface you look good, but this is only the surface." A strange voice came. Dustless rushed to the source of the sound, and a figure with glasses invaded his pupils. Dr. Vogue? Seeing the identity of the person, Dustless just glanced at him as if nothing had happened, and said to himself in boredom, "I am looked down upon. Does Isdeth think that you can deal with me? You won't be arrogant later." Dr. Vogue's face flashed a touch of anger, and he was irritated by Dustless's contemptuous tone. That casual appearance was not like talking to human beings at all, and the target was like an insect that was not worth mentioning. "Go." With a wave of his hand, the soldiers who surrounded Dustless and Mine swarmed over. Obviously, they were all controlled by Dr. Vogue, and they were all transformed people. "You are just ants." His calm eyes passed over their bodies. Dustless hugged the sky with his hands, and immediately the unstoppable wave that was visible to the naked eye broke out in an instant. Shinra Tensei. Boom, boom, boom. The huge stadium was hit hard. Even if Dustless deliberately lowered the power, it was attacked by the repulsive force. Half of the area disappeared, and a shocking super deep pit appeared on the ground. It was like being hit by a meteorite. Gulp. Seeing such a miraculous scene, Dr. Vogue's entire body went numb. He looked at the ghastly wound on the ground and thought about his arrogant words. He regretted it. "I haven't written my will yet, and I still have a bunch of human experiments to do." "Keep going." Dr. Fashionista waved his hand again, and the remaining modified soldiers swarmed out again. But this time Dr. Vogue learned to be smart. The target of the attack was Mine, who was relatively weak. Compared to Dustless, she was easier to deal with. "Damn it, I've been underestimated." Mine felt angry when she saw this. She didn't expect that she was looked down upon, and Dr. Fashion obviously regarded her as a soft persimmon. Boom boom boom. Mine held the taigu in her hand and a lot of lights were shot out. She immediately killed a group of miscellaneous soldiers. However, there was a saying that 2 fists were no match for 4 feet. After a stalemate for a while, Mine was still surrounded and she was very embarrassed. It's over." Dr. Fashionista laughed maniacally. Then he snapped his fingers and said loudly, "Now I'll show you my highest fashion." Snap. After the sound of snapping fingers fell, the miscellaneous soldiers who were still far away from Mine suddenly exploded. Boom. Although Mine defended in time to avoid the ending of being buried together with the explosion, the impact of the explosion still sent her flying mercilessly. This madman. Looking at the flame of the explosion in shock, Mine pinched her fists and looked at the miscellaneous soldiers who were approaching. There were more than a dozen of them and she suddenly felt miserable. These minions have been transformed into human bombs. Taking a deep breath, Mine tried to stabilize herself, but her heart was still beating faster. She had seen the god of death in a trance. Disappear. Glancing at Mine, who was desperate, Dr. Fashionista snapped his fingers again. Boom boom boom. More than a dozen human bombs all exploded, and immediately set off an earth-shattering sound. The violent movement could be felt hundreds of meters away. So Mine, who was only a few meters away from the human bombs, naturally could not be spared. It's a pity. I wanted to discuss life with Dustless in detail and let him become a member of my Fashionista army. Dr. Fashionista said to himself, looking at the rolling fire. He was sure that even his death would die. Buzz buzz buzz. At the moment of turning around, a ray of sacred golden light fell from the sky, accompanied by a voice that ignored all living things. "This is Dr. Fashionista was stunned and his eyes stared in horror. At the place where the sound came from, a golden giant was clearly visible, and the deadly oppression instantly filled the world. A monster composed of special energy appeared in his eyes. It looked ferocious, holding a golden sword of light, despising everything. "How do you feel?" Patting mine, who was helpless, Dustless asked with a smile. "I said before, I am responsible for protecting the sniper, right?" Mine's eyes flashed with gratitude. Dustless seemed to have saved her several times, but mine, who was arrogant, immediately turned her head. "You are doing a good job as a newcomer, a bit like a killer. This guy is really proud." Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He gave mine a supercilious look, and immediately controlled the golden mature Kinsusanu to shoot the deadly light. "For a human being, it's good that you can do this. Go to hell in peace." Whoosh whoosh whoosh. As the voice fell, the mature Kinsusanu's sword suddenly fell down, and an unparalleled chop broke out. Puchi. The huge golden edge annihilated everything, even the air was cut off by it and the space was distorted. Chapter 1639. Gulp. Dr. Vogue was stunned and stared at the roaring light. His heart was full of despair and dead silence. He regretted it for a moment. When his death proposed to deal with Wu Chen personally, he insisted on a one-on-one fight with Wu Chen. Now he suddenly had a feeling of crying without tears, especially when he still had a big move that had not been used yet. Staring at the edge that wanted to cut off the world, Dr. Fashion's heart was cold. Whoosh. Just when Dr. Fashion thought that he was about to die, the destructive light suddenly turned a corner and swept in other directions. Boom. No matter how big the building was, no matter how prosperous the street was, it was annihilated by this invincible blade. Everywhere it went, it was a mess and he was in despair. What's going on? Dr. Fashion was dumbfounded. He touched his limbs that were still intact, and immediately slapped himself inexplicably. "It hurts." Dr. Fashion suddenly grimaced in pain and immediately said excitedly, "Is it that Dustless still can't control this move? God is so kind that he gave me a chance to turn the tables again." "You." On the other side, mine stared at Dustless strangely, staring at his calm face, and always felt a little strange. Instead of saying that God gave Dr. Fashion face, mine felt that Dustless was taking the initiative to let him win. "I want you to die first." Glancing at Dustless fiercely, Dr. Fashion did not hesitate to insert a needle into his neck, and then injected all the mysterious liquid. Ow 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 ow. Crazy and happy laughter came out from Dr. Fashion's mouth, and then his body suddenly became bigger, with himself as the core. A behemoth was exposed to the air. "You turned yourself into a dangerous species?" Aware of the violent breath of Dr. Fashion, mine's face changed slightly, and she looked at Dustless with a little worry. The height of tens of meters was a bit exaggerated. Not to mention the violent dangerous species, even a worm of tens of meters high could break mountains and rivers when it moved. Looking at Dustless, his face did not change, and his deep eyes were as silent as the Dead Sea that could never be seen through. "I gave you a chance to live and you just showed me this kind of naive thing?" A slight ripple splashed in the void. A short sentence was very light, but it came into everyone's ears. "You." Dr. Fashion's face showed anger. He felt that his dignity was trampled on. Looking down at Dustless, because he became tens of meters in an instant, Dustless's figure became a small black dot as small as a thumb. "Go to hell." With a crazy roar, Dr. Fashionista controlled the giant dangerous species to come crushing over. "It's over." Raising his eyelids slightly, Wu Chen stared at the huge body. The silent Ryatsu in his body burst out. The dangerous species that were not terrible instantly withered and dismembered, turning into a large piece of black stone falling from the sky. The 90 black coffin of breaking Tao. It was just a simple sentence, but it made Dr. Vogue feel a deadly pressure. He looked up at the sky, and a sharp black luster whistled towards him. Puchi, Puchi, Puchi. In just a few seconds, the dangerous species that Dr. Fashion trusted was cut into pieces, and his flesh and blood flew all over the sky. He himself also ended up like this, being cut into pieces. In the other direction, Tatsumi suffered from his death as personal destruction. "Kid, is that all you have? You want to avenge others with this level?" I'm laughing my head off. Looking at the miserable Tatsumi in front of her, his death was indifferent and even disappointed. She sincerely hoped that Tatsumi would be as terrible as Dustless, bringing her fatal oppression. But the result was disappointing. Tatsumi was too ordinary. Although he was somewhat amazing and haunted, The gap between him and Bullet was still too big. Did you kill my brother? Tatsumi, who was beaten to the ground, asked angrily. His eyes were red, and he was as crazy as a dying beast. So what if I did? So what if I didn't? I have killed too many people, and it's hard for me to remember the appearance of the people I have killed. Death replied casually. Unexpectedly, this sentence suddenly angered Tatsumi. Go to hell. Tatsumi heard the words and stood up again stubbornly. He held a long spear and stabbed Death's face fiercely, trying to kill her with one blow. Compared with Dustless, you are too weak. Every move of his can give me a huge oppression. Why is the gap so big when we are in the same organization? Phew. Death sighed with boredom. She waved her hand gently and countless ice blades came out. So many. Seeing this, Tatsumi's pupils shrank. He waved his weapon to resist at the first time. Although he broke a lot of ice, he was seriously injured because of the large number. Puchi. 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 There were many scars all over his body. Tatsumi's skin and flesh were broken. In the end, he couldn't bear the blow and fainted. Is he dead? Noticing that Tatsumi had no breath, Death frowned slightly. She wanted to torture Tatsumi and ask for useful information. As a member of the night raid, he must know a lot of useful information. Roland, throw this boy's body to the dogs. Remember to throw it far away, it's better to throw it out of the capital. Glancing at the blonde man beside her, Death ordered very coldly, just use him to tell the members of the night raid that this is the future. Chapter 1640. Captain, are you sure you want to do this? Lan didn't rush to start but asked Death strangely. He stared at Tatsumi's body for a long time. He was keenly aware that something was wrong. He didn't believe that Death didn't see the clues. The most powerful sadist general killed people, and she should know the difference between the dead and the living. So that's the case. Is that the reason? This strongest sadist general is indeed not an ordinary person. She is powerful and unparalleled in intelligence. After a long silence, Lan's eyes lit up, and he vaguely understood Death's intention. That group of abominable night raid should end up like this, throw them to the dogs. Death responded without emotion, then glanced at Tatsumi's body a few times, and then left without any reluctance. Leave this matter to me. Lan left with Tatsumi's body, 2 white wings swept out behind him, and then he rose into the air. Death was the boss of Jaegers and her orders must be carried out. Damn, is Tatsumi dead? The members of the night raid saw Lan leaving with Tatsumi, and they all showed a complicated expression. Anyway, they were also companions and they felt sad. They saw that Tatsumi's body was full of bloody scars, and his expression was stiff, and he couldn't be more dead. Something is wrong. Although he was seriously injured, he is still safe and sound and his heart is still beating. It is reasonable to say that Tatsumi should not be dead. Death should be able to see this kind of thing. Staring at Tatsumi, through the special vision of Rinnegan, Lan's every move could not escape the eyes of Dustless. This little trick could deceive others, but it was too difficult to deceive Dustless, who had Rinnegan. In particular, Tensigan could even capture Tatsumi's beating heart. Does it mean Death did it on purpose? His face changed slightly, and after thinking for a long time, Dustless's face showed an imperceptible smile, and he also understood her intention. In the evening, in the palace of the imperial capital, after abandoning Tatsumi, the members of Jaegers gathered again. The only difference was the lack of Dr. Fashion. Is Fashion dead? I have long advised him not to provoke Dustless, and the result is the same as I expected. Death's tone was full of melancholy. Not to mention Dr. Fashion, even she was not enough in the past. The members of the Jaegers were collectively silent for a few minutes. It could be considered as a moment of silence for the deceased Dr. Fashion. Captain? After a while, Lan looked at Death and saw that she was calm. She couldn't help but ask about her doubts during the day. Tatsumi should not be dead. I can feel his body temperature. Although those wounds are serious, they deliberately avoid the vital parts. Did you do it deliberately? Oh, can you tell? Death shook the goblet in her hand, and the blood-red liquid swayed. Death said her purpose. You're right, Lan, but I deliberately let Tatsumi go. Captain, what's your plan? After being stunned for a moment, all the members asked expectantly. Death obviously did it on purpose, which also showed that she had other plans. The boy was seriously injured by me. If he wants to live, he can only return to the night raid. With a raging smile, Death held her chin with her left hand and said meaningfully, I have sent someone to follow the boy. It's only a matter of time before we find the base of the night raid. Captain deliberately let Tatsumi go. Are you planning to break the base of the night raid? Kurome blinked and asked and also understood the real plan of his death. They couldn't find the base of the night raid before. It would be best if Tatsumi took the initiative to lead the way. In this way we can launch a sneak attack at night. Bolza's eyes were bright, and he agreed with Istetha's plan. In the past they used to launch sneak attacks on the Jaegers at night. This time, it was the Jaegers' turn to launch a sneak attack at night. Yes, for a long time we have been in the light and the night raid has been in the dark. The initiative of the battlefield is in their hands. The Jaegers are too passive. This time, it must be our turn to take the initiative. We can turn the disadvantages into advantages, especially when the people of the night raid sneak attack us. This time, it's our turn to launch a sneak attack on the dustless people. Istetha's analysis was very comprehensive, and this was her plan. Since the two sides couldn't defeat the night raid in a head-on confrontation, they could only apply what they learned. They used the strategy before the night raid, sneak attack. The value of Tatsumi is limited. We must maximize the use of this boy so that we won't let down the dead fashion. Will, the task of monitoring Tatsumi is handed over to you. The Jaegers lost a member in the first battle, and his death was somewhat frustrated. At night, Tatsumi, who was abandoned in the wilderness, opened his eyes again and looked at the dark sky. The beautiful starlight was in his eyes. Tatsumi's face flashed a touch of nostalgia. It's good to be alive. After experiencing a crisis of death, Tatsumi felt the preciousness of life. I didn't expect that my ability to pretend to be dead could deceive his death. Tatsumi was complacent. At that time he realized the gap between him and his death. Tatsumi knew that there was no hope for the reward. As a result he pretended to be dead. He thought that he would be seen through by his death. Unexpectedly, it was unexpectedly smooth. It hurts. After moving his body a little, the tingling suddenly spread all over his body. Tatsumi grimaced in pain, but he could only drag his tired body to find the base of the night raid again. A pair of green eyes had been staring at Tatsumi's movements. When Tatsumi left, it also followed. Chapter 1641. The base of the night raid. It was late at night, but everyone did not sleep. After the battle with the Hunter's Special Police, everyone had many knots in their hearts that had not been untied, and they were quite nervous. However, at the moment, everyone's eyes were fixed on Tatsumi's head. You can escape from the hands of his death? Looking at the bloody Tatsumi, Lubbock took the lead to question, and he was deeply puzzled that Tatsumi came back alive. After all, the opponent was his death. Although the other members of the night raid did not speak, they were puzzled. They even prepared for Tatsumi's funeral. Now this guy suddenly came back alive. They were really shocked. What's with your eyes? Are you sad that I didn't die? Tatsumi was out of breath when he saw the changes in everyone's expression. He was secretly angry. This group of heartless guys saw that he came back alive, and they all showed a disappointed expression. It seemed that they were very upset that he didn't die. If you want to blame, blame yourself. You want to challenge his death. This is like hitting a stone with an egg. Even if you really die, it's the result of your own actions. I will never be sad. Mine turned her head proudly and didn't even look at Tatsumi. Tatsumi was speechless and he immediately quibbled with a red face. I was testing the strength of his death to prepare for everyone to counterattack the capital in the future. You saw the strength of his death during the day. You have to thank me. When did this kid become so shameless? Dustless looked at Tatsumi with a funny look and ridiculed. Are you sure you are testing his death? Aren't you being beaten by his death as a sandbag? You guys stop before it's too much. Now show the expression of welcoming the return of the hero. Also, please immediately put away this expression of encountering a jinx. Immediately. Tatsumi's internal organs jumped fiercely. He wanted to cry but had no tears. For Dustless and others' shameful behavior, he was also helpless. After all, they were the mouths of others. By the way, it's too strange. Istetha is the strongest general. She has experienced countless battles. She is a strong person who climbed out of the pile of dead people. How could such a person not be able to differentiate between the living and the dead? Hakame expressed the doubts in her heart and glanced at Tatsumi's embarrassed face. She didn't want to hurt everyone's harmony, so she quickly explained, I just expressed the doubts in my heart. There is no other meaning. That's simple. Dustless sat on the sofa, looked at the night sky lazily and said casually, Istetha deliberately let Tatsumi come back. That guy has been looking for the base of the night attack. Tatsumi is a suitable leader. Impossible. Tatsumi immediately denied and said loudly, "You think too highly of his death. She is not as terrible as you think. After all, she is just a woman. Although she is stronger than me now, give me a year or two, I can definitely surpass her." Just a woman? Sometimes women are more troublesome than men. Dustless scoffed at Tatsumi's words. This guy hadn't figured out why he could come back. Maybe he thought it was because he was too smart. "Tatsumi, although I don't want to hurt you, it's strange that you can come back alive. My opinion is the same as Dustless. I think his death deliberately let you go. That woman is terrible." Leonie frowned. She was once responsible for monitoring his death and had the naive idea of assassinating his death, but the beast's instinctive perception of danger made her stop and give up the unrealistic plan. "Even Sister Leonie doesn't think highly of me?" Tatsumi's heart was cold. He looked around at the members of the night attack and found that unconsciously, he had become the target of public criticism. Everyone was not interested in him. But, Tatsumi's mouth squirmed, and when he was about to explain, the earth-shattering sound of the cannon resounded through the dark night sky. Boom boom boom. The quiet night was like a sudden earthquake. The earth shook, the mountains were torn apart, a large number of mountain fragments peeled off, and even the base of the night attack was hit hard. This wave of roar fell, and the base turned into nothingness in an instant. "Not good, all the enchantments I said have been touched. It is estimated that everyone has been surrounded, and there are a lot of people who have admitted defeat. There are thousands of people." Lubbock broke into a cold sweat. There were too many people, and obviously they were prepared before. All the members of the night attack were depressed when they heard the words. They looked at the petrified Tatsumi at the same time. Their resentful eyes were obviously saying that he was indeed a jinx. Cough cough cough. Everyone should join forces to fight against the enemy. At this point, Tatsumi also knew that he had made a big trouble. He quickly encouraged them in an impassioned tone. "One, don't give up easily. Concentrate all your strength to break through in one place, you can definitely escape." "Right, Dustless." Tatsumi glanced at Dustless and decisively kicked the ball to him. "Breakthrough? Why do we have to break through?" His expression did not change as he looked down at the approaching figures in the distance. It was a large black mass, and all of them were the Empire's troops. "Since they are here, just annihilate them all." Tilting his head, Dustless said as if nothing had happened. His light tone made people feel speechless. It gave people the feeling that it was as simple as eating and drinking water. "Annihilate them all? Is there something wrong with my ears?" Leonette rolled her eyes at Dustless and complained, "You have to understand that those are the elite soldiers under his death, not the decadent Empire soldiers. Although they are all from the same country, their combat power is very different." "It doesn't matter." Dustless heard the words and waved his hand. He smiled and said, "In fact, I found out that his death deliberately let Tatsumi come back, and I have already thought about how to deal with that guy." Chapter 1642. What's the plan? The members of the night raid were all eager, and their expectant eyes were fixed on Dustless, and they could no longer move away. "Hey, this guy shouldn't be an old monster who has lived for hundreds of years, right?" Tatsumi was jealous, but after thinking about it, he kept silent. He had to admit that compared with them, Dustless was more knowledgeable. Although he looked like he was 18 or 19 years old, his life experience was extremely rich. "Wait." At this moment, Tatsumi suddenly thought of something and asked angrily, "Since you know that I'm not dead, why don't you rescue me? What if I'm killed? Is there a teammate like you?" "Sorry, my memory is not very good. I forgot for a while." Shrugging his shoulders, Dustless showed an innocent expression, which made Tatsumi angry. "Let's put that kind of little thing aside for a while. How are you going to solve the problem?" The night raid members interrupted and asked. They were not interested in Tatsumi's affairs. This kid was a jinx. His death brought a large number of soldiers. Then, the corners of Wu Chen's mouth curled into an arc as if his scheme had succeeded. He said coldly, "There's no doubt that these soldiers are used to defend the imperial capital. Now that she has mobilized them, it means that the imperial capital's defenses are very weak. We can take this opportunity to launch a sneak attack on the imperial capital." "It's indeed a good opportunity to attack the imperial capital." Everyone was stunned, and their eyes were shining. Isdeth and her hunters came with a large number of soldiers, so the imperial capital's internal defense must be unusually empty. As for General Budo, he was killed by Dustless a long time ago. It's easy to say." Tatsumi snorted and said impolitely, "I advise you not to dream. Now we are surrounded by his death. How can we attack the imperial capital? By flying. That's right. A group of Night Raid members showed a disappointed expression. Although it was suitable to attack the imperial capital, it was annoying that they were surrounded by his death's army. They couldn't escape even if they had wings. How could they attack the imperial capital? Don't worry about that. Dustless smiled mysteriously and confidently. You didn't forget the battle during the day, did you? When I left the Warlock of Flying Thunder God in the capital. Flying Thunder God Warlock? The members of the Night Raid all revealed puzzled expressions. Their expressions were rather complicated. In front of Dustless they were like children who had never seen the world. They simply could not understand what Dustless was talking about. Flying Thunder God Warlock? What was that? Don't tell me you can teleport us to the imperial capital in an instant. That kind of thing does not exist and there is no such Taigu. Tatsumi muttered with an expression that said, don't try to fool everyone. You're really smart. Dustless stared at Tatsumi in astonishment and gave him a thumbs up. Tsuke Tatsumi, your IQ has increased once. You really guessed it this time. To some extent, the Flying Thunder God skill can be used for space transfer. Can you really do that kind of thing? A group of members of the Night Raid were shocked by Dustless. They stared at Dustless with dry mouths and tongues. If they could do it, they could take this opportunity to attack the imperial capital, and the result would be very rich. Everyone's hands are held together. Dustless did not say much but asked everyone to hold hands. Only Tatsumi stared at Dustless with his round eyes. He wanted to see what he would do. If you like to be abused by his death so much, you can continue to wait. Staring at Tatsumi, who was indifferent, Dustless said casually. These two words seemed to contain a curse. Tatsumi's body twitched a few times, and immediately his face was full of coldness. He quickly pulled Rabik's right hand. So let's start. Seeing that everyone was holding hands, the chakra in Dustless's body erupted. Just a thought, the world in front of everyone changed. Kacha. The void in front of them was distorted and shattered like a mirror. Then Dustless and others were sucked into this space. It's so bright. Suddenly, a large white light swept in front of them. The members of the Night Raid subconsciously closed their eyes. The dazzling light was close to the scorching sun. After a while, when everyone opened their eyes again, the world in front of them was no longer the Night Raid base that was bombarded. But, is God's blessing? Which God Dustless believes in is so merciful. He can also fulfill other people's wishes. I also want to be his believer. Looking around the environment, Tatsumi said something ridiculous. The surrounding situation was completely different from before. It was also a ruin. Looking around, it was the competition venue where they fought with Istetha's Jaegers before. There was no doubt that they were definitely in the imperial capital at this moment. Long story short, now I order everyone to attack the palace immediately as the acting boss and try to kill Minister Onesta. Hakim didn't care about the shock and quickly ordered everyone to attack the palace. And at this moment in another direction. Isteth was very depressed, looking at the Night Raid base that was reduced to ruins. After waiting for a long time, she didn't see any counterattack from the Night Raid. They were all dead as if they were bombarded to death by artillery. It seems that something is wrong. You guys go in and search. A few minutes later, Isteth found that the situation was a bit abnormal. She ordered to stop the bombardment and sent the Jaegers to explore the ruins of the Night Raid base. About half an hour later, she got an answer that made her restless. Chapter 1643. What, they all ran away? Hearing the report of several members of the Jaegers, Isteth only felt that the world in front of her eyes was dark, and her confidence collapsed instantly. Her cold eyes suddenly fell on Will's head. Don't look at me. Finding that Isteth looked at him like a hungry wolf, Will wanted to cry but had no tears, so he had to bite the bullet. I really saw Tatsumi running here at that time, and I can be sure that this is the base of the Night Raid. Although the bombardment just now has razed their base to the ground, we can still see some clues from the ruins. There is no doubt that this is the base of the Night Raid. But where are the people? Istetha's words hit the nail on the head, making Will speechless. That, Miss Isteth, the people of the Night Raid, may have run away in advance. Shrinking his neck, Will stared at Isteth with some fear. Boom boom boom. Istetha's body burst out a powerful ice ripple, and the ground around her condensed a layer of solid ice in an instant, and the temperature suddenly dropped below zero. So strong. The members of the Jaegers were all horrified, and their knees were involuntarily bent. They were overwhelmed by Isdetha's strong breath, and they were in danger of suffocation at any time. Looking at the whole world, only Dustless could suppress her now. For others, Isdeth was the real god. Well, I mobilized a lot of people, but you finally told me that they ran away. Isdetha's tone was as cold as a knife, and Will was stung all over. Damn Tatsumi. Will was terrified, and he cursed Tatsumi, who dug a hole millions of times in his heart. He gritted his teeth and replied, Mrs. Death, this has nothing to do with me. I will just shut up. She shouted at Will, and the raging in Isdetha's eyes could not be concealed. But after a few seconds she finally loosened her clenched fists. She knew that the more strange the situation was, the more she had to keep calm. Where do you think Dustless went? Isdeth asked in a low voice, but in fact she already had the answer in her heart. Probably in the imperial capital. The members of the night raid looked at each other and said at the same time. The night raid had only one goal from the beginning to the end, to overthrow the decadent empire. It's the same as I imagined. Hateful. I've been completely tricked. Isdeth gritted her teeth. Unconsciously she was tricked by Dustless once, and her carefully prepared plan was completely aborted. Speed up and return to the imperial capital. With a sigh of disappointment, Isdeth had thought of the tragedy of the imperial capital. If it was in normal times, there were still soldiers guarding the imperial capital. But at this moment she brought out a large number of elite soldiers, and the imperial capital was in danger. At this moment, inside the imperial palace. Boom boom boom. Sharp explosions rang out incessantly, filling the vast sky. The usually sacred palace was now ablaze with flames, and a large number of soldiers fell into pools of blood. Those guys are really ruthless. Dustless lazily wandered back and forth in the imperial palace. After thinking for quite a while, he still couldn't find the trace of that damned minister and the young emperor. Given the temperament of Minister Ernest, they might have long escaped with the emperor. At the same time, in a very special room. Is this Taigu? Staring at the weapons of various strange monsters in the house, Dustless's mind waned. After a few glances, he turned his head and left. Taigu was useless. Dustless? Did you find Minister Ornester? As soon as he walked out of the room full of Taigu, Akame and others swarmed in. When they saw the Taigu in the room, they were very excited. Dustless could reach the state of indifference, but others were all robbers and all the Taigu were robbed. They are not in the imperial palace. Dustless heard the words and shook his head gently, indicating that Akame and others did not need to waste their efforts. I'm afraid that they have already died. Just now, I received accurate information from a few guards. Minister Ernest and his son Sheila have mysteriously disappeared with the emperor. Her eyes were dim. Akame was very disappointed. It was a rare good opportunity, but Ernest ran away. Shira? Thinking about this character carefully, Dustless suddenly waved his hand and said, Don't look for him, I know that Shira. Although this kid's strength is not worth mentioning, his ability is not bad. I remember that he can teleport people to other places. And, looking around, Dustless whispered, We have been completely surrounded and we have no time to chase the emperor. Minister Ernest and his perverted son are really troublesome. When they looked around, they would be surprised to find that there were a large number of dangerous species in the ruins of the imperial palace. Ouch. These monsters made a sharp roar and disgusting saliva fell from their mouths. Their bodies were ferocious and strong, and their appearance was similar to that of humans, and there were more than one or two of them. Looking around, there were more than hundreds of dangerous species. These dangerous species are a bit strange. Akame and other members of the night raid frowned. It was the first time to find dangerous species whose appearance and body were similar to that of humans. It was a fantastic story. They are actually all human beings and they are all the research objects of Dr. Fashion. Their appearance is all because of Dr. Fashion. The people who released them are probably the minister and his son, and they want to destroy us with this. Dustless gently explained, if these dangerous species ran to the street to make trouble, maybe they could destroy the entire imperial capital. That damned father and son have been caught by me, and I must tear them into pieces. Leonie was furious, the bones in her hands were cracking, and she looked like she hated evil as if she could not wait to tear the disgusting father and son apart their bones. Among the members of the night raid, only Dustless could remain calm. After all, he had experienced too many things. Not to mention such a small matter, he had even seen people who were crazier than Minister Ernest. Chapter 1644. Although they were killers, in the final analysis, the essence of human beings had not changed. Ow 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 ow. The heart-wrenching screams came into the ears. Looking closely, these dangerous humanoid species were like wild cats that smelled blood, rushing to be the first to come. Yasukani no Magatama. Hordes of destructive radiance whizzed out, shattering those who had overestimated themselves. The ferocious light bullets pierced through all of these humanoid dangerous species. He was beaten so badly that he looked like a sieve. Clang 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 clang. The other idioms of the night attack did not talk nonsense. Those who should pull out the sword pulled out the sword, and those who should use the knife went on the knife. The dangerous species had a great deterrent to ordinary humans, and the night attack had little effect on them. Time flew by, and in a blink of an eye, 4 or 5 hours had passed. When Isteth rushed back to the imperial capital with a group of people, the scene of the palace was terrible. Are the emperor and Minister Ernest dead? Looking at the burning palace in front of her, Isteth asked calmly without changing her expression. This? The members of the Jaeger Special Police looked at each other and they did not know how to answer. Of course not dead. At this moment the ground suddenly swept a purple light, and a glowing Tai Chi diagram emerged. Minister Ernest and his son Shira, including the young emperor, came into view. Minister Ernest, who had just escaped from death, saw the ruined palace and yelled, General Isteth, your performance is disappointing. You are 100% sure that you can defeat the night attack, so I allowed you to take away the troops guarding the imperial capital. Now the imperial capital was attacked by the night attack, and the palace has completely collapsed. You have to take full responsibility for this. The minister is right, I was almost killed by you. If it weren't for the minister's son's help, what you see may be a headless corpse. The emperor also followed Minister Ernest's words. Your Majesty has allowed me to form a special force to deal with the night attack. The dark-skinned young man standing on the left side of the emperor laughed twice and immediately raised his arm. General Isteth, my name is Shira, and we will be colleagues from now on. Isteth just snorted and refused to shake hands with Sheila. At the same time she finally understood why General Budo hated this pair of teachers so much. At the same time, in another direction, Dustless and the others had already returned to their original base. The scene that greeted them was too horrible to look at. The base that they had raided during the night had been completely reduced to ruins that no one cared about. In the future I'll have to live in the open. Lubbock sighed and leaned against the big tree. He hated Isteth in his heart. All in all, this place is not suitable for a base. I'm afraid that after Isteth knew that she was fooled, she will come here again after a while. Let's change to another place. Dustless knew Isteth's temperament quite well. He knew her very well. Where is mine? Chitong's eyes swept around and frowned. It seemed that from the beginning, mine suddenly disappeared like evaporating from the world. When Dustless heard the words and was about to use observation hockey to search for mine, the embarrassed voice came out from the dense forest behind him. Cough. I'm here. Sorry, my stomach suddenly felt uncomfortable. I just went to solve it. Mine carried Nangong Taigu and ran out of the forest. Her tone was very embarrassed. Your stomach felt uncomfortable? Dustless heard the words and carefully examined mine for a moment. He immediately said softly without changing his expression, It's really rare. I remember that you didn't eat for half a day. How can you feel uncomfortable? Yeah. Chitong also looked at mine strangely. Mine's face was unnatural and she immediately said to Dustless angrily, You even doubt this kind of thing. Do you want me to take you to solve it personally? Quietly staring at mine for a long time, Dustless said faintly, Forget it, I'm not so bored. Not everyone likes to tease people like you. After the voice fell, Dustless stared at mine with deep meaning. There was a different meaning in the depths of his eyes. It was very different from the way he looked at mine at ordinary times. The base was destroyed. Let's eat some fruits. She took out a few wild fruits. Mine smiled and said, I have all washed them. Other members of the night raid did not refuse when they heard the words. They took the tempting fruits and began to eat. Hoo. About half an hour later, everyone fell to the ground inexplicably and fell asleep. A group of idiots. If you are so careless, you will be annihilated sooner or later. At this time mine. No, it was not mine anymore. The original mine changed into a woman with a more plump body. What came into view was a long-haired beautiful girl wearing headphones, wearing a British-style uniform, with a helpless melancholy smile on her face and candy in her mouth. She looked like a greedy cat. This person was Chelsea, who disguised as mine. Annihilated? Don't talk big there. A plain voice came. Dustless, who was also sleeping, suddenly stood up. Your ability is good. You can disguise as mine, and the appearance is exactly the same. To be honest, I was really surprised. However, there are too many loopholes in your disguise of mine. You didn't faint? Did you pretend deliberately? Chelsea was shocked after being stunned. At the same time, Dustless's sudden move shocked her. Chapter 1645. Swish swish swish. The light flashed, Dustless's body gradually lost its texture and disappeared without a sign. It was difficult for the naked eye to keep up with the moving speed. When he appeared again, Dustless had already appeared in front of Chelsea, and he also held a dagger with cold light. The blade was as cold as snow under the moonlight, and he pointed at Chelsea's throat mercilessly. "What do you want to do?" Chelsea's eyes flashed with panic and she could not help but step back a few steps. Her eyes were a little scared. When she assassinated others before, this situation had never happened. "I have no malice." Throwing the dagger aside, Dustless looked up at the depth of the void and calmly said, "I just want to remind you that everyone is different. You have too many flaws. If you are so careless, you may die." In the original book, Chelsea was killed by Kurome because she was careless and treated Kurome as an ordinary person. The ending was even more tragic. She was killed and she didn't even have a whole body. "You're quite observant, aren't you? You can even see through my flaws." Chelsea noticed that Dustless was not hostile, and her perturbed heart finally calmed down. She immediately showed a doubtful expression. "You seem to have recognized that I am not mine early. Of course, although your Taigu ability is good, you can only disguise as a person's basic appearance. It is impossible to imitate mine's temperament, the tone of speaking, including the style of the office." Dustless explained patiently, "Mine will not be as gentle as you. She is very proud. Although you can pretend to be mine, you are just a walking dead with no charm." "It seems to be reasonable." Chelsea nodded thoughtfully after hearing the words, but she did not know mine very well, so she was full of flaws and was seen through by Dustless. "I will not let you see through it next time." Chelsea looked at Dustless's eyes that seemed to know everything and she was quite jealous. She swore that she would teach Dustless a lesson next time. "Chelsea, how do you feel? Night raids aren't as bad as you think. Although they are young, they have carried out countless missions. My subordinates are very outstanding." The familiar and proud laughter came from the dark forest. Turning around, it was the boss Najenda. "I reluctantly approved of him." Chelsea pointed at Dustless and then looked around, taking in the sleeping people of the night raid. She shook her head and denied, "As for them, they are still a little immature as assassins." "Damn it, you actually dared to disguise yourself as Dustless to trick me." Behind the boss Najenda, mine, whose face was red, stomped her feet angrily. She was so angry that she wanted to beat Chelsea up. If Najenda was not present, perhaps mine's pumpkin would have aimed at Chelsea. These two fellows are indeed natural enemies. Dustless's face was indescribably strange when he heard the words. He looked at Chelsea with some confusion. He did not expect that she could disguise herself as him, and looking at the current situation, it seemed that she also succeeded in fooling mine once. Era. You don't need to care about that kind of little thing. You can rest assured that I will keep it secret for you." Dustless gave a malicious look to mine, and then Chelsea glanced at Dustless without changing her expression. Then she smiled at mine meaningfully. "These two people are really boring. They involve me for no reason." Looking at mine's angry expression and Chelsea's proud look, Dustless knew that he was innocent. Dustless could not say much about this. He did not like to meddle in other people's business. He just looked at the Taigu behind Najenda lazily. "Susanoo. It seems that there is no special place." After peeking a few times, Dustless immediately labeled him as an ordinary person. "Don't you want to know what I did in disguise as you?" Noticing that Dustless had nothing to do, Chelsea's action showed that she approached him. "You?" Dustless glanced at the girl with a very strange look. He knew that the character of this girl was extremely evil. He was speechless suddenly. "You wouldn't use my appearance to peep at mine going to the toilet, right?" After the voice fell, Dustless stared at Chelsea intently. He thought that this girl would simply deny it. Unexpectedly, she just smiled ambiguously and said, "You are really smart. You deserve to be recognized by me. The answer is very close." Fuck. Dustless's expression twitched when he heard the words. He could finally understand the reason why mine and Chelsea often quarreled with each other. It was really miserable to have such a weird teammate. It was okay to trap the enemy, but it was really too bad to pretend to trap the enemy. "You seem to be in big trouble." Najenda looked at the ruins of the night raid base and frowned. The air was still filled with the thick smell of gunpowder that had not yet dissipated. Looking at the scorched earth around, it was obviously the tragedy caused by the bombardment of firearms such as cannons, and the range was still extremely vast. Najenda had vaguely guessed what had happened. Was the base invaded? Isteth can actually find here. She is really capable. Taking a smoke, Najenda looked dignified. Even if he had overestimated her ability, now according to this situation, it seemed that he still underestimated Isteth's ability. This has nothing to do with Isteth. It was our own people who led her here. Dustless smiled and looked at Tatsumi, who was sleeping. Not only him but everyone was sleeping. The fruit that Chelsea had just sent was filled with sleeping pills and other drugs. Everyone was sleeping soundly. Taking advantage of such a good opportunity, Dustless added oil and vinegar to Tatsumi's fire. Najenda was furious after hearing this. Regardless of what happened, she ordered Susanoo to build a confinement room and lock Tatsumi up for 3 days. She also cut off his water and food supply. Tatsumi was completely cheated. Chapter 1646. 5 days later. Tatsumi, who was confined, secretly scolded his bad luck. He was inexplicably taken to confinement by the boss, even there was no basic reason to persuade him. Tatsumi was exhausted when he thought about it, and he was full of hesitation about his future life. On the day when he was out of the confinement room, he saw Dustless's wicked smile. Tatsumi knew that the culprit who framed him was probably Dustless. Forget it. Unlike the past, Tatsumi was relieved this time. Being sick for a long time, he was often framed by Dustless. Tatsumi had been immune to it. After his ability to resist attacks became stronger, he didn't care about it. On the contrary, Dustless was depressed. After all, when he was bored, he usually framed Tatsumi to pass the time. Now this kid was abused by himself every day. He actually trained a steel body, and his ability to resist attacks reached the peak. Dustless was somewhat surprised. In fact, it was worth mentioning that Susanoo just integrated into the night raid. He hooked up with Tatsumi. The relationship between the two people heated up quickly, almost like that of Bullet. Susanoo also very generously agreed to train him by Tatsumi. Tatsumi did not continue to bicker with Dustless, but ran to train silently. At this moment, in the conference room that was usually used for meetings, the smoke was lingering. The scene was slightly serious. Najenda meticulously stared at the information of the past few days. She was silent for a long time, then she slowly said, "Sheila, the son of Minister Ernest? If this kid didn't make trouble, the minister and the emperor would be dead. It's a pity. It seems that he is also a difficult person." Dustless and others were silent. Although Sheila had no ability and his strength was general, his Taigu Shangri-La Dimensional Square was a good ability. Its attack power was not strong, but it belonged to the rare Taigu of the space series. Its ability to escape was absolutely unparalleled in the world. The boss Najenda then continued, "The two scumbags released the experimental body of Dr. Vogue. Now the dangerous species in human form are destroying everywhere. Our next task is to eliminate these dangerous species." "Isn't there Isteth's hunter?" Dustless asked first. This was Isteth's accusation. What did it have to do with the killers? He always felt that Najenda was too nosy. "You may not know, but Isteth has been dismissed." With a satisfied and cheerful smile on her face, Najenda said something surprising. "The incident a few days ago, you made too much trouble burning the palace, so that the ministers and the emperor were dissatisfied with Isteth. Now Isteth has been removed from her position, not to mention, her hunter has also been neglected. No wonder the boss wants to deal with those dangerous species. It's impossible to count on the imperial capital to deal with them. It's already a blessing if they don't release those dangerous species from the Fashion Research Institute." Dustless heard the words and immediately frowned. However, removing the position of Isteth can't solve anything. According to her nature, she will continue to lead the hunter, to fight against us. By the way, since Isteth has been removed, who is responsible for the defense of the imperial capital now? At present, the task of guarding the imperial capital is taken by Sheila, the biological son of Minister Onesta. He replaced the original position of Isteth. Now he is responsible for all the defense of the imperial capital. Najenda spat out the smoke and her expression was a little relaxed. Compared with Isteth, Sheila was also very troublesome, but compared with Isteth he was insignificant. This was also a blessing in the misfortune. Isteth caused the imperial capital to be breached, and the morale of the imperial soldiers was deeply affected. During this time, many soldiers surrendered directly, and many people surrendered to the Revolutionary Army. All aspects of the border have made breakthroughs in close combat, and the final battle with the Empire is close at hand. Najenda shouted with her arms raised as if she was injected with chicken blood. Ow 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 ow. The sharp roar of the beast suddenly came from a distance. Dustless and others rushed out of the window. A large number of various beasts and dangerous species were screaming to the sky. In order to avoid the entanglement of the hunter, the boss Najenda decided to take a risk and place the new base of the night raid in the Valley of the Wilderness. There were few people here and there were dangerous species running rampant. It was the best choice for the base. Tatsumi and Susanoo seemed to be training. How did they let this group of dangerous species run over? Akame asked with a puzzled face. It is indeed a bit strange. With the strength of Susang, it is enough to easily solve these invading dangerous species. Leonette was also talking to herself blankly. This is very simple. Dustless spread his hands out and said scornfully, "Such childish behavior you all still can't tell? This is obviously intentional. Probably Susanoo wants us to see the strength of Tatsumi. He is asked to train like a devil every day, and his strength is estimated to have improved a lot. It's not as ridiculous as you said." Chelsea had candy in her mouth, and she also felt that this approach was very naive. If she wanted to show her ability, she could show her strength in the mission. There was no need to be so troublesome. Hee hee, Dustless smiled disapprovingly and said with great certainty, "If I didn't guess wrong, the savior Tatsumi will soon appear and crush these insects. If you don't believe it, open your eyes and see clearly." Ow 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 ow. After a while, Tatsumi wearing haunted, fell from the sky, like a god of war blocking in front of a group of various beasts. Am I right? Dustless winked at Akame and others and he looked very arrogant. Chapter 1647. The members of the night raid were not surprised by Dustless's prediction. This kind of thing happened a lot. Predicting the future is one of the many abilities of Dustless, and it is an extremely accurate one. There are few deviations. Shoo shoo shoo. The next scene was exactly the same as Dustless's guess. Tatsumi was like a wolf in a flock of sheep. After Susanoo's training and because he was often destroyed, he was now much stronger than Tatsumi in the original work. After all, there was no Dustless in the original work and now the world was chaotic because of the appearance of Dustless. Tatsumi was often ridiculed as weak as a chicken, so this guy worked very hard to improve his strength. Poochie. 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 After a while, the situation was one-sided. The beasts were slaughtered by Tatsumi. The scene was quite shocking and the corpses were almost piled up like a mountain. Tatsumi has become a lot stronger. Leonie drank a big mouthful of beer happily. After the carving of Bullet and Susanoo, Tatsumi was the opposite of the young boy at the beginning. Others nodded slightly, and Dustless was not interested in other people who reluctantly recognized Tatsumi's strength. Boring. Lying lazily on the table, in Dustless's view, Tatsumi's only advantage was his ability to resist attacks, and Susanoo was better than him at washing and cooking. Tatsumi is at least your companion. You should be more optimistic. Perceiving Dustless's dispirited look, Chelsea was speechless. My impression of Tatsumi has changed slightly. He is not bad, at least in terms of strength. He seems quite reliable now. Do you think he is reliable? Dustless heard the words and snorted contemptuously. That kid, I can slap him until he can't tell the east from the west. Boom. At the same time, Tatsumi suddenly broke the door and stared at Wu Qin fiercely. I heard what you said just now. You want to kill me with one slap? I don't accept it. This guy. Dustless raised his eyebrows slightly and looked at Chelsea subconsciously. He saw that there was an unconcealable arc on this fellow's lips. She was extremely cunning and sinister. You did it on purpose, didn't you? Dustless whispered into Chelsea's ear. Chelsea immediately shook her head and denied it. No matter what, we are companions. Why would I cheat my teammates? I'm not you. Chelsea shrugged with an expression that said it had nothing to do with me. This guy. Dustless blinked. He could tell that Chelsea had done it on purpose. I can slap you away. No, I can slap you away with one finger. What's wrong with that? Witnessing the valiant Tatsumi, Dustless asked plainly after drinking a glass of water. If you have the guts, let's fight one-on-one. Tatsumi snorted. Although he did not think that he was Dustless's opponent, it was not as exaggerated as what Dustless said. He would not be casually slapped by a finger. Challenge me? Your wings have hardened. Wuxian realized that he seemed to have underestimated Tatsumi. This guy didn't even dare to challenge him. Usually when he bumped into Tatsumi he would avoid him. Since you want to test your strength, I have no problem with it. You can ask the boss. She is weak and allows us to have a private duel. I don't care. Dustless closed his eyes and said comfortably, "Boss." Tatsumi immediately looked at Najenda with a hint of help. It doesn't matter if we have a duel, but we must stop. The boss unexpectedly agreed to Tatsumi's condition. Strange. The members of the night raid looked at each other. Usually, the boss had always strictly prohibited this kind of thing. After all, it was a duel. It also meant that there was a winner and a loser. As a result, it may hurt the trust between the members. Tatsumi is an exception. Najenda smiled and said nothing. The more oppressive Tatsumi was, the greater the room for improvement. It was best to let Dustless destroy Tatsumi. In the open space outside the base, Dustless and Tatsumi were 15 meters apart. Remember, stop. The boss Najenda took a deep breath and immediately shouted, "Start now. Finally, I can have a fair duel with this guy." Looking at Dustless, Tatsumi, who was wearing the haunted armor, was very excited. On this day he had been dreaming for a long time. Ha! Tatsumi then took a deep breath and suddenly disappeared. Tatsumi is transparent? He is more skilled than before. His aura completely disappeared. Tatsumi's sense of existence disappeared. Dustless is in trouble. A group of members of the night raid gossiped and discussed. They were quite surprised by Tatsumi's progress. This kid had worked a lot recently, but his strength had improved. Sure enough, everyone didn't find me and this guy didn't find me. Tatsumi was quite excited. He was close to Dustless, only a few steps away, and Dustless was still looking around, seemingly looking for Tatsumi's trace. It's time for revenge. With a shout in his heart, Tatsumi raised his fist and hit Dustless's face. The face that was more handsome than his own was too annoying in Tatsumi's eyes. Idiot. Wu Chen's face was blank and the corners of his mouth suddenly swept up a scheming arc, and he whispered, "Armament hockey hardening." Bang bang bang. A dull explosion sounded out of thin air, and Tatsumi's whole body trembled fiercely. He hit Dustless's body with all his strength, but he was shaken. It hurts. Even with the protection of the armor, Tatsumi roared in pain. He felt that his right hand was about to be crippled. He looked at Dustless, who was motionless and unharmed. His dignity was shattered into pieces. He hit the target with all his strength. The enemy was fine, but his right arm was almost scrapped, and the pain was self-evident. Chapter 1648. Even so, the physical pain was far less than the mental torture. In order to surpass Dustless, Tatsumi worked hard every day and paid a lot of price, but now when he punched Dustless, the feeling was no different from punching a meteorite. Dustless was not hurt at all, not even a trace was left. It turned out that someone attacked me, it hurts. After a while, Dustless pretended to be surprised and screamed, giving Tatsumi face. If he looked like he was fine, then this kid would be too aggrieved. This acting is too bad. A group of night raid members couldn't stand it anymore. Someone punched you and you only felt pain after more than 10 seconds. This is too fake. Acting should at least be at the level of a professional actor. You can feel pain? Could it be that my fist worked? Tatsumi was very excited when he saw it. Although Dustless just snorted twice and his expression didn't look like he was in pain, Tatsumi was still excited. Human beings are emotional creatures. Once they are excited, they will inevitably be full of flaws. This is the case for Tatsumi at the moment. Tatsumi, be careful, your transparency is lifted. Susanoo quickly reminded loudly. Tatsumi, who seemed to be in a daze, was still immersed in joy and did not realize the coming of the crisis. Phew. At this moment, Tatsumi's vision suddenly darkened, and he also recovered from the surprise. It was okay if he didn't look, but when he looked closely he suddenly panicked. What came to him was a big foot. Boom. With a muffled sound, Tatsumi was instantly knocked back more than 10 meters away. This kick was merciless, and the armor on Tatsumi's face was suddenly broken, revealing a young face. Even because of the excessive strength, his nose was slightly sunken and red and swollen. His nose was bleeding profusely. Bastard, why are you so ruthless? Tatsumi gritted his teeth in pain and shouted angrily. The boss said to stop. You did too much. I didn't leave any scars on you. Scratches are inevitable. There's no need to be so concerned about it, Dustless said casually, and he turned into a golden light and instantly appeared behind Tatsumi. He recalled the scene of Kakashi playing Uzumaki Naruto in Naruto and Naruto Naruto and Naruto Naruto and Naruto. Ninjutsu, Millennium Death. Dustless took out the wooden stick that he had prepared in advance and unceremoniously stabbed it into the depths of Tatsumi's soul. Damned bastard, I'm going to curse you to hell. How could you think of such a sinister move? Tatsumi's screams resounded through the sky. Tatsumi's screams were creepy. The members of the night raid looked at the place where Tatsumi was attacked. How terrifying. Lubbock felt cold all over and felt that it was necessary to keep a distance from Dustless. The most important thing was that he must not offend Dustless. Maybe what happened to Tatsumi would happen to him. Shameless. The female members of the night raid blushed, and Tatsumi, who was rolling on the ground in pain, could not bear to look at them. Enough. Glancing at the miserable Tatsumi, the boss Najenda gave a look of pity. Obviously he knew that he was not the opponent, but he still provoked Dustless. It was completely self-inflicted. That's it for today. I have a task for everyone to complete. Calling the members of the night raid to her side, Najenda explained, eliminate all the dangerous species released by Shira. You must kill them all. Due to the danger of this task, everyone is dispatched. Although his death has been dismissed, she is still very active recently, and she may encounter the minister's son, Shira. Everyone must be careful. As for Tatsumi, staring at Tatsumi who was rolling on the ground and crying, the boss Najenda did not expect him to join them. In this state she was afraid that he would only drag them down. At night the sky was getting late and the sky was full of beautiful stars. If the sound of bones being broken in the forest was ignored, the scenery was even more beautiful and harmonious. Ouch. The humanoid dangerous species with blood moved aimlessly in the forest. Many individuals had blood on their mouths. Several nearby villages were slaughtered by them, and all human beings were swallowed alive like food. Ladies Death, the minister has relieved us of our duties. Why did he send us a task? The members of the Jaegers asked inexplicably. The person who spoke was Kurom. The old guy knows my temperament. He knows that it is useless to relieve me of my duties because I will do the night raid, so he gave me a task out of boredom. The old guy is too self-righteous. Other members of the Jaegers were slaughtering the dangerous species. Kurom followed his death herself to kill all the dangerous species. There was no need for so many people to participate. I heard that the minister's son, Shira, also took action this time. Kurom was full of doubts. There was news that pointed out that the minister's axe released the dangerous species in the Dr. S. Fashion Research Institute. This has nothing to do with us. My task is just to kill the guys of the night raid. Istetha's eyes were cold. She sneered at the little Shira. That kind of scum was not enough for her eyes. For Isteth, Shira was just a small character who could be defeated by raising her hand. She didn't even need to do it herself. Kurom and Will could almost kill Shira. At the same time, the people of the night raid also quickly arrived. The members of both sides rushed in the same direction and were about to meet. It was that the situation was extremely strange this time. These dangerous species in human form were like ants smelling honey. They all gathered in one place strangely. Chapter 1649. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. On a flat mountaintop surrounded by cliffs, a large number of dangerous species gathered here. The members of the night raid were also scattered around to hunt these dangerous species that looked similar to humans. Seriously, Dustless's gaze slowly spread out, taking in the surrounding environment. About 100 meters away, there was a dark and terrifying cave, from which came the hysterical roars of beasts. Seems to be there. He opened the map and glanced at it casually, and then glanced at the dark depths of the cave. Although there were some differences, there was no doubt that this was the research base of Dr. Fashion. As for the source of the blueprint, it was obtained by the boss Najenda from the Revolutionary Army. Let's settle this quickly and go home. Wu Qin stretched his body, and the fatigue that went deep into the soul swept his whole body. Wu Qin yawned lazily. When he was about to enter the cave to eliminate the dangerous species around, there was a sudden change. Hum, hum, hum. The strange cry of a beast descended from the sky, echoing throughout the vast sky. Looking up at the sky, one could see that it was actually a ferocious-looking super-large bird. However, this was not the main point. Although flying dangerous species were somewhat rare, Wu Qin caught sight of other figures on the back of the dangerous species of birds. Long hair fluttered in the wind, and the water-blue elegant hair fluttered in the wind. Everything was visible at a glance. It can't be her, right? In his mind, a voluptuous and sexy figure suddenly flashed past. Her delicate facial features were exquisite like white jade, and she was like a peerless beauty that had walked out of a painting. Her exposed white skin caused one's imagination to run wild. Swish, swish. That figure suddenly fell and a tight-fitting leather suit came into view. Her figure was tightly bound, and her slender white legs were completely exposed. Sure enough, it's Esteth. No wonder her right eye is jumping around today. Enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road. Dustless sighed and retracted his sight. On second thought, the person who met Esteth here in the original work was Tatsumi, but now it was him. Dustless sighed with emotion. Some things were destined by the heavens. Boom boom boom. The black shadow landed on the ground and the ground shook violently. A large amount of dust and smoke flew up. Even those dangerous species that had no consciousness were frightened by this huge tremor and fled in all directions. Today I'll get rid of all of you dangerous species. I didn't expect you to be here. Seems like we're fated. Esteth glanced around and suddenly found the thin Dustless. Her pupils suddenly flashed a raging light. That was the excitement of a wild beast meeting an evenly matched opponent. It was a crazy possessiveness. The scarlet demonic light in his eyes was an unprecedented excitement. The way this guy looks at me is not right. There were some goosebumps on his body. Thinking of Esteth's unique interest, Dustless felt cold. There's no grudge between us. You've been dismissed. Dustless was the first to speak. There is no distinction between tasks in the contest between the strong. A lot of light appeared in Esteth's hand, and a huge ice blade was condensed in an instant. You are no match for me. Dustless shook his head and opened his mouth. When he was about to continue to speak, a very discordant voice came from the cave full of dangerous species. Ah, you too, if strong people like you fight, the capital may be affected, so please disappear from this world, okay? Wuxia and Esteth were stunned at the same time. They looked towards the direction of the arrogant voice. A young man with dark skin and a strong body came into view. There was a cross mark on his nose, which was very conspicuous. Shira? Dustless and Esteth spoke at the same time, and the two frowned tacitly. The unexpected guest who suddenly appeared was the son of Minister Onesta, Shira. Something's wrong. How can this guy appear here? After a short loss, Dustless whispered secretly, coincidence? There is no such coincidence in this world. This guy clearly ambushed in advance. Did this guy already know that I would appear here? Looking at the map in his hand, Dustless pondered for a moment and said bluntly, Nagenda's map should be made by you, right? Yes. Shira nodded proudly and stared at Esteth like a villain. His tone was raised several times and he said proudly, including the drawings in the hands of General Esteth, they were also provided by me. I intend to deceive all of you night raid and hunters here, and then let all of you disappear. However, the plan seems to have some changes. I didn't expect only you two in the end. Who gave you the courage to do this? Esteth said with a murderous look, and her long hair was standing up. Who allowed me to do this? Esteth, are you an idiot? The old guy naturally acquiesced in this kind of thing. Shira curled his lips with great disdain. You have been abandoned, Miss Esteth. Dustless glanced at Esteth, who had a cold face, and smiled gloatingly. He also understood Onesta's plan to use the map to attract all of the night raid and wipe them out in one fell swoop. As for why even Esteth had to be eliminated, this was even simpler. Without the threat of the night raid, Esteth and her hunters had no value to exist. I'm very curious, how do you wipe us out? Just based on those fancy moves of yours? Touching his chin, Dustless asked curiously, and you can't kill us both. Minister Onesta's end is even more miserable. Not only he offended the night raid, but he also trapped Esteth. Minister, the old guy actually dares to plot against me? I will definitely let him taste the most ferocious torture in the world. Esteth screamed with cold light in her eyes. She was like a dying beast and her anger was rolling. Did I say that I want to kill you? I just want you to disappear from this world. Shira laughed sinisterly and did not hesitate to release the Taigu Shangri-La dimensional matrix. He knew that he was not the opponent of Esteth and Dustless, so he just sent them to the edge of the universe. Chapter 1650. Buzzing. At this time the ground shook slightly, and then the purple demon light shone. A Tai Chi pattern appeared quietly, and the surrounding space began to distort. This good for nothing is quite good. Looking around, Dustless stared at Sheila's Taigu with interest. Shangri-La, dimensional matrix. Although the ability was not good, it was also good. It was the best among the Taigu. Good for nothing? Grease heard the words and his face jumped a few times. He sneered and said, "You two disappear together. Even if you die, someone will accompany you. Am I very kind? If you have any last words to thank me, say it quickly." When the voice fell, Sheila stared at Dustless and his death, trying to catch a trace of fear from their faces. "Are you an idiot? Have you graduated from kindergarten?" This was what Dustless said. "Is your head broken by the door? If so, I don't mind torturing you. Maybe I can restore your broken worldview again." This was Isthetha's sarcasm. "You two have guts." Sheila almost vomited blood when she heard this. She wanted to slap herself a few times. Why did she have to waste her time talking to such a stubborn person? She was too stupid. Disappear. She stared at the two people fiercely. The purple light was dazzling to the extreme. Then there was a ripple in the void. Isteth and Dustless both disappeared. In the strange space it was dead silent. Looking up it was dark all around. It was bottomless. It was quiet like stagnant water. There was no object. There were only two people in the whole world, Dustless and Isteth. What is this place? Isteth looked at the surrounding environment blankly. She suddenly felt that it was very difficult to breathe. This should be another dimension, a world without air. The kid transferred us here. I am afraid we can't go back. What would happen to people without oxygen? There was no doubt that they would die. Damn it. Isthetha's face was pale. She did not expect that she would fall into Sheila's hands. It was definitely a shame for her to be plotted by this kind of insect. Are we going to wait for death here? Isteth smiled bitterly. Her body was different from ordinary people. Even if she did not absorb oxygen, she could live for a while, but she could not live forever or she would die sooner or later. Isteth was unwilling to die together with Minister Onesta. You want to die here? I'm sorry. Although I've lived for hundreds of years, I haven't lived enough. If you want to die, you can continue to stay here and wait for death. Sorry, I have something to do, so I'll leave first. The sudden words made Isteth stunned. She opened her crystal eyes and looked carefully. Dustless's eyes seemed to have changed dramatically. Is that Dustless's original appearance? Staring at the indifferent eyes, Isteth was a little dumbfounded for a while. In that unique ocean she was like a lonely boat that could tilt at any time. Isteth couldn't tell the specific feeling clearly. In short, it was very small. God's power. As Dustless's voice fell, there was a ripple in the dark void. A small hole gradually enlarged, connecting to the unknown mysterious world. From the section of the black hole, Isteth felt familiar. How did you do it? Do you also have the same Taigu as Sheila? Isthetha's eyes were shining. It was the first time for her to admire someone's life. People live in the world no matter who your enemy is. No matter strong or weak, you have to keep a last card for yourself. In the previous world, there is the mark of my former flying thunder god Warlock, which can be used as a space coordinate. That guy wants to throw me in the universe so that I can't go back. It's so funny. What is the flying thunder god Warlock? Although Isteth did not understand what he meant, she also understood that Dustless left a card in advance. She could not help but admire his far-sighted IQ secretly. Thinking of Dustless's previous words, she could not help but gently nodded. What he said was right. When a person lives in the world, no matter when, you have to prepare a way for yourself to be safe under any crisis. Let's go. Glancing at Isteth faintly, Dustless took the lead to step into the black hole. Stepping into the hole that was torn by God's power, it was still a dark world. Isteth followed Dustless. A path completely composed of special energy spread to the front. Can we really go back? About a few minutes later, the dark exhalation was endless, and Isteth whispered, "If you don't believe me, you can go back, I promise not to stop you." Dustless suddenly stopped and pointed to the large dark space behind him. Isteth glared and looked up at Dustless's indifferent eyes. She was angry. When did someone dare to talk to her like that? Isteth, although I don't know what you plan, but you should deliberately let Sheila launch Shangri-La, dimensional matrix, right? Looking at Isteth with no expression, Dustless then opened her true face, pointed to her eyes and said calmly, "Don't think that I don't know anything, you can't hide anything from these eyes. Your Taigu, demon god's manifestation, essence of the demon, is a terrifying Taigu. The hidden ability, Mokbatmo, can even freeze time and space. If you use this trick you should be able to kill Sheila instantly, but you deliberately let her go. I need a reasonable explanation. Chapter 1651. Isteth couldn't help but be stunned. Hearing this decisive and affirmative tone, Isteth had an illusion that Dustless was more familiar with the demon god's appearance, devil's essence, than herself. Don't hide it, your move, Moke Baltimo, is enough to freeze time and space, but it consumes a lot of energy. Even you can only use it once a day. Dustless said, his eyes were full of wisdom. Predicting the future was one of the many skills of a traveler. I can use it once a day. I didn't expect you to know this kind of thing. Isteth couldn't help but smile bitterly, feeling that all her secrets were exposed. She didn't expect Dustless to know this kind of thing. Isteth's face showed a teasing smile. You know so clearly. Have you ever sneaked into my residence and secretly stole from me? TSK. It's really easy to be careless. Living in my own home makes me feel uneasy and insecure. Dustless frowned when he heard that. He always felt that Isteth's words had other meanings, but he still said, as long as I want to know, you can't hide from my eyes no matter what underwear you wear. Isteth did not deny it. She always felt that this was a fact, because her secret tricks were far more secretive than underwear. Give me a reasonable explanation. Dustless was too lazy to continue to talk nonsense with Isteth and said directly, otherwise I can throw you out, and you can die alone in this other dimension. In your situation at that time, you can freeze time and space to kill Sheila, but you didn't do so. With all due respect, this is too suspicious. The reason? After a while, Isteth no longer concealed it. Her eyes were burning, she bit her thin lips and said, a hungry beast, it has been hungry for a long time, and suddenly encountered a very rich meal. But the strength of this meal is too strong, what would you do if it were you? What a strange metaphor. Wu Chen frowned slightly when he heard that, then he said softly, if it were me, I would deliberately approach it and wait for a suitable opportunity to launch a sneak attack and take it down in one fell swoop. Wait, don't tell me the big meal you mentioned is me? Seeing Isteth's hot eyes, Dustless asked angrily, if the big meal in your mouth is me, then I have to take back what I said just now, and I must give you a new answer. Tell me about it. Isteth asked expectantly. If it's me, then, you will be in big trouble, Miss Isteth. His eyes gradually became cold, Dustless turned into black and rushed out, and the deadly wind rushed to Isteth. So fast. Isteth's pupils shrank suddenly. Although she was surprised by Dustless's sudden attack, she reacted immediately and made a fierce counterattack. Ka. Isteth stomped her feet slightly, and then with herself as the center, a huge ice wall rose from the ground, wrapping Isteth in layers. It was airtight to the outside world, defending against the impact of Dustless. Fragile. Dustless looked contemptuous when he saw this. His eyes immediately turned, and the ice layer disintegrated in an instant. In just a few seconds, it suddenly evaporated and disappeared. Amaterasu. The black fire baked the ice layer around Isteth, and it peeled off at a speed visible to the naked eye. Isteth was also exposed to Dustless's attack. Still so strong. Isteth sighed slightly when she saw this, and her beautiful pupils immediately dimmed, but this was only a moment. Isteth was not the kind of person who would surrender. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. With a light wave of her hand, countless icicles shot out in a formation that could topple mountains and overturn seas. Fire release. His cheeks puffed up slightly, staring at the flying ice, and a big flame was blown out from Dustless's mouth. Fire release, grand fire annihilation. The density and scope of the sea of fire flew out in an instant, and the icicles were melted into water drops before they got close to the sea of fire. A woman who doesn't know when to stop actually wants to torture me? It's a fool's dream. Dustless sneered coldly. The reason why Isteth was willing to be transmitted to other spaces with him was to find a suitable opportunity to approach him, and then give a fatal blow. This crazy woman really belongs to the type of brain disease. Dustless was disgusted. He knew Isteth's strange character, and it was necessary to be caught and tortured. And torturing a person who was stronger than herself was more successful than taming those scum. Isteth, you seem to think that I'm too easy to bully. With a cold smile on his face, Dustless suddenly laughed. This guy, Isteth saw this and had a bad feeling. She felt uncomfortable being stared at by Dustless's playful eyes. When she tortured others, she usually used that kind of eyes. Since you took the initiative to come to me, then I can only give you a taste of your own medicine. You like to train others so much, Why don't you be generous this time and be trained by me? When these words fell, Dustless's body instantly disappeared without a trace. Where did he go? Isteth was shocked and quickly looked around, searching for Dustless's trace. Just at this time, a big cold hand suddenly grabbed her shoulder. And what worried Isteth even more was that her limbs lost most of their strength in an instant, and she had no extra strength to resist Dustless's powerful strength. I'm not a gentleman. You can call me a rude butcher. When I meet someone who doesn't obey, I only have one way to deal with it, with my fist. Chapter 1652. Damn guy, his strength is too strong, I can't break free. Aware that she was bound by Dustless, Isteth immediately struggled with all her strength, but sadly, Dustless's hand was like the hand of God. Even if his 5 fingers were just gently pressing her, Isteth had no extra strength to escape. Even because of the excessive force, Isteth herself was sweating. Dustless's smile was even more difficult to hide, quietly ridiculing Isteth for overestimating herself. I can only use that. With a ferocious luster in her eyes, Isteth decided to use her best trick. In such an embarrassing situation, only that trick could win by surprise. Mok Boda Mo. With a whisper, the world in Isteth's eyes immediately froze, everything stopped flowing and time stopped at this moment. Damn it, where did this damned monster come from? Isteth rubbed her sore shoulders and escaped from Dustless's restraint. Her eyes locked on him with hatred. At this moment, Dustless was like a stone, motionless. I can't hurt him, I can only hope that this guy will leave this damn place. Looking around the dark space, there were only Isteth and Dustless in the whole world. Pucci. The ice sword was inserted into Dustless's body and cut open his stomach, but Isteth avoided the fatal vital parts, hoping to use this to threaten Dustless to compromise. When I leave here, I will deal with you. TSK, I can even see you in my dreams. Your existence is both surprising and frightening. Looking at Dustless, Isteth grabbed his chin and stared at the motionless Dustless. Suddenly she felt that it was necessary to leave the mark of a winner on Dustless. It seems that I didn't bring anything meaningful when I came out. After thinking about it, Isteth found that she had nothing good to leave. Finally, she looked at Dustless's dry lips and her body was uncontrollably moved. What's wrong with me? After a while, Isteth reflexively left her own lipstick mark on Dustless's lips, which was clearly visible. She blushed when she regained her consciousness, and her delicate jade face was even blushing. However, this revenge is very suitable. That arrogant gaze of this guy is truly displeasing. Especially that appearance of his as if he is unrivaled in the world. Then Isteth's shyness disappeared and became a matter of course. Staring at the conspicuous lipstick mark, Isteth smiled and was very satisfied with her masterpiece. She felt that there was nothing wrong with it. The winner could do whatever they wanted with their spoils of war. They didn't need to care about the feelings of the people involved. She didn't need to care about Dustless's feelings. This was the privilege of the victor. Ka. A lot of cracks suddenly appeared in the special space. Isteth frowned slightly and knew that the time for her unique skill Mok Baltimo was coming. Immediately, he looked down at Dustless with a complacent expression. He placed his hands on his hips and looked extremely arrogant, hoping to catch a glimpse of Dustless's disappointed and incredulous expression. And Dustless, who just woke up from a dream, frowned and suddenly felt a tingling pain in his chest. He subconsciously forgot that it was a big sword made of ice. Is it the skill called Mok Baltimo again? It's really convenient. Completely ignoring the ice sword that penetrated into his body, Dustless suddenly touched the corner of his mouth subconsciously, and a unique fragrance rushed into his nostrils along his cheeks. This is the smell of Isteth's body? After taking 2 deep breaths, Dustless's face became more strange. Looking at Isteth, who was close at hand, the smell was somewhat similar to her body, or even exactly the same. He vaguely guessed that Isteth had done something crazy to him. The moral degeneration of the world is getting worse. It is necessary to guard against female perverts in the future, otherwise, it will be easy to get away with it. Dustless said to himself like a wooden man. Why, do you have a problem? Catching the strange expression that flashed across Dustless's face, Isteth thought it was dissatisfaction, and swore coldly and domineeringly, Don't say that I just kissed you a little now. I tell you, you are now my prisoner of war. Whatever I want to do to you, I will do it to you. All these are the privileges of the strong, and the weak are destined to be exploited and trampled. Isteth is really arrogant and lawless. Wu Qin raised his middle finger at her without any hesitation. It's fine if you just kiss someone casually, but you even arrogantly announced that all of this is the privilege of the strong. You're so arrogant and bossy that you treat everything like an ant. But this arrogant personality was also in line with Istetha's personality. The privileges of the strong? She whispered softly, then the ice sword that penetrated Dustless's body collapsed instantly, inexplicably all shattered, and the long and narrow wound also showed signs of recovery. In this case, that is to say, people with big fists can dominate the fate of others at will? Then please kneel down immediately and make a gesture to please me. With a wicked smile on his face, Dustless decisively chose to return all. What Isteth did to him he must return all. In the words of Isteth, this was the privilege of the strong. The wound is healed? Isteth was stunned and her eyes were wide open. She did not expect that Dustless had such an ability to make people jealous. At the same time, with the arrival of the majestic momentum, Istetha's knees gradually bent down. Isteth, now kneel down and please me. Chapter 1653. Let me kneel down to please you? Istetha's pretty face suddenly glanced over when she heard the words. She simply did not look at Dustless's hateful eyes. Instead of surrendering, she became more arrogant. Say a reason for me to kneel down and surrender to you. Isteth retorted coldly. She was not afraid of Dustless's despotic power. Isteth would not bow down to Dustless for such a big thing about her face. Not to mention kneeling down, it was absolutely impossible. Ah, do you still need a reason? This kind of worthless excuse, didn't you just say it for me? Dustless smiled and circled around Isteth. Then all the momentum broke out and fell on Isteth. She immediately gasped like a cow, but Istetha's knees never knelt down. Tsk, so arrogant? Dustless smacked his mouth, then raised a wicked smile at the corner of his mouth. The sense of oppression overflowing from the body was a little stronger. Boom, boom, boom. There was a huge ripple in the dark, mysterious space. Dustless released his momentum. Isteth finally couldn't stand it. Even if she was unwilling, she had to bow her head at this moment and kneel in front of Dustless without dignity. Have you forgotten everything you said just now? Then let me help you remember. The winner has privileges, the privilege to let you kneel down and bow your arrogant head. Dustless looked down at Isteth with a threatening look, and immediately raised his eyes slightly, showing a very kind expression. I am not as bad as you, who likes to torture others' bodies. I think it is the highest level of torture to give the other party a serious mental blow and cause serious psychological obstacles. What do you want to do? Seeing Dustless's devilish smile, Isteth felt a chill on her back. Her tone couldn't help but be a lot weaker, not as strong as before. Hey, Dustless heard the words and smiled casually. He immediately snapped his fingers and said loudly, you will know right away. Focusing on Istetha's blue pupils, Dustless's sight suddenly became distorted. A massive amount of eye power surged and instantly annihilated Istetha's mind. Tsukuyami. His eyes emitted abnormal mental power, and his eyes gently stared at Isteth. Her eyes suddenly became empty. She was like a walking corpse in an instant, her eyes had no luster. In an unknown mysterious world. What is this place? Isteth opened her eyes and looked confused. She carefully looked at this strange world and suddenly realized that she was tied to a cross. There was no one around and there was only a large bed in front of her. What's going on? Isteth was stunned. There was another her on the quilt, and what made Isteth blush was that she was entangled with a man, and this man was the existence that made Isteth gnash her teeth, Dustless. Moreover, the two of them quickly did the deed. Illusion, it must be an illusion. Istetha's face turned green when she saw this. She almost vomited blood when she saw herself being ruined by Dustless. This scene was unbearable. Dustless humiliated Isteth severely, and she even smiled shamelessly. She accepted any request of Dustless and executed it without hesitation. Hey, it was an extremely obscene voice. Isteth turned her head and saw Dustless with a smirk on his face. He was teasing her. How does this feel? Watching yourself and your enemy doing that kind of thing together? Hey, you have never experienced this before, right? This scene will play out in front of you for the next 24 hours. Dustless smiled proudly and made up his mind to destroy Istetha's dignity. You bastard, kill me if you have the guts. Isteth vomited blood. She didn't expect Dustless to be so despicable. Don't be proud, I know this is an illusion. I won't be affected by you. Isteth retorted with a red face. I'm sorry. Although Tsukuyami is an illusion, everything you experience in this world will be returned to the real you. Dustless laughed with a smug expression. At the same time, Dustless waved his hand and a bottle of special pills appeared in his hand. Everything in this world was under his control. Dustless could get whatever he wanted. Gulp. Dustless glanced at Esteth maliciously and finally stuffed all the pills into her mouth. What is this? Why is it sweet? It's delicious. Give me a few more if you have the guts. Esteth pretended to be calm, but her heart was very strange. Her body was so hot that she felt uncomfortable as if she was about to explode. A few more? Dustless immediately showed a shocked expression when he heard the words. He stared at Esteth stupidly and choked. Are you sure you want a few more? And are you sure it's delicious? This thing will go bad if you eat too much. Although you have a strong ability to resist attacks, there is no need to court death. Maybe there will be a big problem. I'm fine. I'll take a few more bottles. Staring at Dustless's shocked face, Esteth had a sense of achievement. She endured the discomfort of her body and planned to annoy Dustless. This was the first time that Esteth found Dustless defeated. Of course she had to hit him hard. However, Wu Chen's next words made Esteth, who was in high spirits, collapse. She even almost suffocated to death without being able to catch her breath. Cough cough cough. Miss Esteth, you think that the pill is delicious. I'm very happy because I made it myself. But I forgot to remind you just now. The pill is actually an aphrodisiac. Chapter 1654. This is an aphrodisiac? Esteth's face was extremely colorful in an instant, blue and white, purple and black. In just a few seconds she changed more than a dozen different faces back and forth. Esteth wanted to ask Dustless if he needed to be so despicable. You bastard, I will tear you into pieces. Esteth gnashed her teeth and held back her anger. Her body was trembling, and the flame in her heart was getting hotter and hotter. Esteth was not good, her cheeks were flushed, and her blue eyes were almost bursting into flames. Still so strong? Dustless heard the words and laughed. He simply sat next to Esteth holding his chin and smiled. I'm curious how long you can support. Oh yes, a thought flashed through his mind, then Wu Chen said loudly, Miss Esteth, if I remember correctly you just wanted to eat this thing, right? Pointing to the pill in his hand, it was the aphrodisiac that Esteth had just eaten. I didn't. Esteth quickly denied, kidding, only an idiot would continue to eat that thing. You are just my captive now and you have no right to choose. Glancing at Esteth faintly, Dustless did not hesitate to pour another bottle of medicine into Esteth's throat. Woo. Gulp. Esteth gnashed her teeth, but her arms couldn't resist the long legs. After a few sobs, she swallowed all the aphrodisiac into her throat. Hey, this is a good show. Ignoring Esteth who was vomiting, Dustless stared at Esteth motionlessly, as if he had found a fun toy and was very interested. You wait. Esteth was extremely sad, she clenched her gums and even blood oozed out. The pain made her think clearly. Gee, your determination is really admirable. Aren't you afraid of biting off your tongue? Dustless said with a worried tone, but he really admired Esteth's decisiveness in his heart. You look down on me too much. Esteth snorted coldly. Her tone was still that of a queen. Even if she was full of flaws, even if she became a captive, she would not easily bow down to Dustless. Really? Then congratulations on passing the first level, Miss Esteth. You can enjoy it slowly. Such an experience is unforgettable. I said before that the duration of Tsukuyami is 24 hours. Dustless wore a harmless smile on his face. He waved his hand and disappeared from the Tsukuyami space. The world that entered his eyes turned into endless darkness. It's about time to go back. That damned brat, does she think she's special? What a joke. But since this kind of thing happened suddenly, I don't need to do anything in the future. Esteth hates the father and son. Ding ding. Yin. A light hum came out from Esteth's mouth. Looking down at her dark red cheeks, it seemed that Esteth's head was not normal at the moment. Her eyes were filled with desire as she tried her best to raise her burning right arm to tug at the corner of Dustless's clothes. She couldn't help but touch the most important part of Dustless's body. All of this was done instinctively. Tisk, it's really abnormal. Carefully observing Esteth's blurred eyes, Dustless's heart was as calm as water, and his wild nature could be controlled reasonably. Esteth exuded a strong smell of maturity. People with a little less concentration might rush to her. It's time to retreat. Ignoring the dark world, Dustless gently raised his right arm, covered with a special Ryatsu fluctuation. This was not the Ryatsu of an ordinary Grim Reaper. The temperament was cruel and fierce. It was undoubtedly the Ryatsu of a greater void. Greater void above Ajuchas, including Ajuchas, had a special ability, Black Cavity, which could open the space crack connecting to other dimensions, so it was not difficult to leave here. After a while, Dustless raised his right hand, condensed an inexplicable power, and immediately slid it gently. Kakaka. This mysterious world of different dimensions suddenly broke, and the bright sunshine also shone in. Isteth, who had been tortured by the blow, also opened her eyes and looked at the world full of life. Her eyes were dull and empty. I'm counting on you to retaliate against Minister Onesta. Don't let me down. Turning his head and holding Isteth, Wuxia stepped out of the dark extra-dimensional space. The bright sky was cloudless. Although the air of the blue void was full of blood, it was fresher than the previous place where he couldn't even see his own fingers. Dustless stepped on the void and looked at the ground below. It was a large number of human-shaped dangerous species that were slaughtered. I guess Akame and the others have retreated. His observation hockey spread out and found that within a few kilometers of the surrounding area, there was no sign of life, and the dense forest had become an out-and-out place in the world without a trace of life. It's time for me to retreat. Moving his stiff body a little, Dustless was about to leave, but Istetha's voice stopped Dustless from leaving. You'd better kill me. Istetha's tone was weak, her body was hollowed out, her clothes were wet and filled with a special accident. Although you hate me now, maybe you will come to me for help in the future. His clear eyes locked on the powerless Isteth. Dustless waved his hand and left leisurely. Without enough strength in the future, Isteth will not continue to come to die. Unless she still wants to experience the unforgettable feeling of a lifetime. At present, Istetha's big enemies, there are two more abominable objects. Minister Onesta and his son. They are more annoying than Dustless. Without them, nothing will happen and Isteth will not be played by Dustless. The initiators of all this are Minister Onesta and his son. Isteth naturally hates them and it is necessary to rush back to the capital to retaliate. Chapter 1655. Isteth was not a naive girl. She knew what would happen if she retaliated against Dustless before she had enough strength. This time, Dustless just deliberately disgusted her to shatter Istetha's unattainable heart. Next time when she was tired of Dustless she could kill him. The stronger a person was, the more difficult it was to figure out their mind. They could call each other brothers in the last second, but the next second they could turn into a smiling tiger and stab him in the back at any time. Dustless, I will fight you to death. Isteth gasped with her mouth wide open. She was tortured by Dustless. During the time in the Tsukuyami space, every day felt like a year, which made Isteth understand the highest level of torturing people. She was so inexperienced before. Plop. Isteth, who had just stood up, didn't expect to fall to the ground before she took a step. Her body had been hollowed out by the hateful aphrodisiac. She walked unsteadily. Isteth herself was also very confused. People who didn't know the truth might think that she was sleepwalking. Lady Isteth. The happy and excited voice came from not far away. She turned her head and saw a few people reflected in her eyes. It was Istetha's Hunter's Special Police. But several people were deeply tired and there were obvious knife wounds on their clothes. Their faces were sallow, and they were not much different from refugees suffering from famine. It's good that you are all right. Her tiredness was swept away, and Isteth showed a satisfied smile. She hit it very well. The unlucky things that happened with Dustless before were out of her sight. By the way, what happened to the scars on your body? These seem to be knife wounds. Don't tell me that those dangerous species in human form can use weapons. Isteth asked puzzledly. Is Isteth talking about these scars? Will took a step forward, bowed his head and reported angrily, it's the minister's son, Sheila. When we were hunting dangerous species, that guy led the army to attack us indiscriminately. He didn't even give a reason. In order to cover our retreat speaking of this, Lan, Will and Kurom all lowered their heads in shame. The meaning was self-evident. Damn you, Sheila. Damn Minister Ernest. Isteth was furious. She turned into a demon and released a suffocating killing intent. The area within hundreds of meters was covered with ice. Even some birds on the treetops were frozen and turned into specimens before they could fly. Isteth naturally knew the hidden meaning of Will's words. Bowls had been killed. The members of the night raid were now filled with resentment towards the father and son of the minister. They had also lost their last bit of confidence in the empire. In fact, Will had even suggested joining the night raid. Surprisingly, the other members did not object to it. Go back to the imperial capital and chop the ministers into pieces to feed the dogs. Lowering the brim of her hat, Istetha's breath was as cold as the cold wind. This wild beast showed its sharp fangs out of the cage. She used to aim at the enemy, but this time she aimed at the Empire. She forgot all the grievances with Dustless. In the new night raid base. I thought that guy was dead. In the conference room, looking at Dustless sitting opposite, Tatsumi covered his eyes in despair. He didn't have the ability to kill Dustless. The tragedy was that even God protected Dustless, and he could be lucky every time. This is the fundamental reason why I was temporarily restrained. 10 minutes later, Dustless reported the reason for his disappearance to Najenda. Of course, he chose to forget the thing with his death. This would definitely be isolated as a pervert, but some people still made use of it. I didn't expect his death to be so obsessed with you. Leonet's eyes were shining, then she slammed the table and suggested loudly, why don't we use Dustless to seduce his death? Maybe we can kill her. Pucci. The tea that he just drank was sprayed out. Dustless stared at Leonette and scolded, Isteth is not a love-struck fool and my charm is not that big. Let's put Istetha's matter aside for the time being. I'm afraid that she will have a great change. We don't need to provoke this furious lioness for the time being. Don't act rashly. Boss Najenda abnormally refused Leonet's proposal. If it was before, she might really accept this proposal, but now the situation was different. Isteth was trapped by Minister Honest and even almost died. According to Najenda's understanding of Isteth, Honest and his son would inevitably suffer from Istetha's crazy revenge. Naturally, there was no need to participate in the night raid. It was best to sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight. Our next task is Balak. He is the assistant of the Taoist Master of Tranquility, but his real identity is the undercover sent by Minister Honest. There is news that the Taoist Master of Tranquility is planning an armed uprising recently, but this Balak is the biggest obstacle. For the revolution we must get rid of him. This old guy is not simple. He knows that he is the target of the night raid, and there are masters like the 4 Rakshasa demons around him to protect him. Boss Najenda explained happily. As long as the Taoist Master of Tranquility also followed the uprising, the empire would be finished soon, and a new country would come. Finally, we are going to kill this eyesore empire. The members of the night raid were very excited. They had been assassins for so long. No matter who they assassinated or protected, they just wanted to destroy the empire. Finally, they waited for this day and everyone was very happy. Yes, the infinite Tsukuyomi will save all living beings soon. Everyone should feel happy. Chapter 1656. Damn it, damn it, damn it. In the palace hall, there was an angry voice. The strong minister was smashing all kinds of exquisite porcelain angrily. General Isteth, don't kill us. Outside the hall, such screams could be heard. Pucci. However, what they got in return was the sound of the cold body being cut. Shura, Sheila, you are useless. Didn't you tell me that you killed Isteth? Why is she resurrected now? I really shouldn't have trusted a piece of trash like you. Minister Onesta scolded his son to his face. This old man? Sheila's mind was filled with hundreds of thousands of alpacas. He didn't know how Isteth came back, especially looking at Istetha's appearance of killing hundreds of people. He couldn't help but feel cold. The so-called troops and numbers were meaningless in front of Isteth, especially she had several loyal and strong subordinates. Your Majesty. Minister Onesta's eyes were bright, looking at the young emperor with impassioned eyes, as if he saw gold. The desperate old eyes were shining. Minister. The young emperor's pupils shrank, his face was slightly stiff, the old man's eyes made him a little overwhelmed, he was almost melted. You should immediately show the temperament of an emperor now, use the strongest, supreme taigu, supreme taser, to give justice to Isteth, the traitor. Minister Onesta cried loudly, if your Majesty doesn't do it and continues to be silent, the empire will be disintegrated by the traitor Isteth. The empire must not collapse in my generation, absolutely. The young emperor's eyes were red when he heard the words. He had accepted the Minister Onesta's suggestion in his mind. You are really my father. Sheila saw that the emperor was so easy to fool, he secretly admired him. After despising him in his mind, he gave the minister a thumbs up. But Sheila suddenly felt a pain in his old face. He looked in the mirror and saw that it was a huge palm print. Minister Onesta even slapped him mercilessly. You are useless. Minister Onesta was so angry that his blood pressure rose and his head was spinning. He was disappointed with this good son. If it weren't for his bad idea, Estetha's betrayal wouldn't have happened. Damn it. Minister Onesta was furious. Thinking of the fate of being caught alive by Estetha, his fat face trembled. If he was caught alive, he would inevitably be subjected to the most severe torture. Get the hell out of here. Minister Onesta shouted coldly. Now that things had progressed to this point, he no longer counted on this deceitful son of his. It was much easier to deal with the foolish and easily fooled emperor. Estetha will be dealt with by his majesty. Now you should go to reinforce Balak. That guy is very important now. If he has a problem, don't come back. Remember, you have to go there secretly and don't let anyone find out. You'd better kill all the members of Night Raid. Otherwise, even if you're my son, I won't let you off easily. Do you understand? Azura. Minister Onesta waved his hand, indicating that his idiot son could scram. 3 days later, at the site of Anning Road, all the members of Night Raid gathered here. Originally, everyone was ready to fight with the Empire. Unexpectedly, Estetha suddenly attacked the imperial capital. Most of the soldiers were involved. Now the task of Night Raid was much easier. I hope that General Estetha will be a good person to the end and help us kill Minister Onesta and the little emperor. Wu Qin, Mine, and Qi Tong walked on the street openly. Now the empire was besieged on all sides, and it was in a dangerous and embarrassing situation that the empire was about to collapse. No one cared about them. Have you found that these people are not right? They look at us strangely. Stopping, Dustless glanced at the passers-by with a face full of doubts. He always felt that these people's eyes were full of hatred and disgust, and full of hatred. Stupid Dustless, of course we are all killers and we don't disguise ourselves. It's normal for people to feel strange and afraid when they look at us. Mine replied proudly and snorted proudly, or you and Estetha have been together for a period of time, and your head is not enough for you to think about her big breasts? You didn't even notice such a little thing. I can smell something else from your tone. Dustless's eyes fell on Mine's head and he teased with a smile. Are you jealous? Jealous that Estetha has bigger breasts than you. Mine's tone is really sour, and there is indeed the possibility of jealousy. Akame added quickly, making Mine's face blush to the extreme, giving people a sense of danger that was about to explode. Bullshit. Mine straightened her chest, held her head high, raised her hands and turned her head disdainfully. What's the use of those 2 lumps of meat? I will dislike them when I walk. Let me tell you too, as a woman the connotation is the key. Mine, don't quibble, I can smell your jealousy. Akame shook her head gently, and her eyes were always staring at the heads of the passers-by. She also felt strange. In addition to assassinating Balak, it seems that our mission is to instigate the Anning sect. Why haven't we seen the hierarch yet? I remember that the headquarters of the Revolutionary Army contacted him in advance. Also, I think there are problems in other places. Akame looked at these people cautiously and said in a deep voice, to be honest, I also feel that these believers are full of hostility to us. The Revolutionary Army should have no hatred with them. Why do they have a hidden killing intent to us? Or is this my illusion? It's not an illusion, I can also feel the hostility clearly. Dustless looked serious and said calmly, there is another possibility. The hierarch disappeared or he may have died. These believers are hostile to us. I am afraid that it is because the behind-the-scenes manipulator pushed the death of the hierarch of the Anning sect to us. Chapter 1657. Was he killed? Mine and Scarlet Pupil lowered their heads and pondered. If they analyzed carefully, it was not impossible. On the way here, they received the news that someone wanted to assassinate the hierarch of a Ning sect. In order to prevent the rebellion of a Ning sect, Minister Ernest instigated his subordinate Polly to kill the hierarch, and then it was normal to blame the news on the Night Raid. Let's retreat temporarily. Dustless suddenly suggested softly as he looked at the dark alley on the left. Later, regardless of whether Scarlet Pupil and Mine struggled or not, he directly pulled them away. Ah, that guy has a good nose, it's really a headache. Shortly after Dustless and others left, there was an unhappy tone from the previous alley. He said in surprise, that guy named Dustless seems to have noticed something wrong. Damn it, I still want them to continue to sneak into the city and then annihilate them. Who knows that these guys of the Night Raid slipped away in advance, a group of cowards. With the help of the blurred light, 4 vague figures with different appearances could be seen in the depths of the corner. 2 were women and 2 were men. They were the private executioners of Minister Ernest, 4 Rakshasa demons. Catch up with them. Anyway, Polly has Master Sheila's protection. If we kill all the members of the night raid, it will be a great achievement. Ling Lu, one of the 4 Rakshasa demons, said. Yes, don't be afraid. 4 against 3 we have an absolute advantage. The other 3 nodded after hearing the words. They glanced coldly at the direction where Dustless and others left. They immediately looked at each other and decisively followed. Looking at this posture, it seemed that they wanted to beat up Dustless and others. Hoo. The night sky fell, the cold wind of the night was blowing, it was extremely piercing and filled with a different kind of oppression. Somewhere on the top of a low hill, Wu Qin, Mine and Chi Tong looked down at the town in the distance. They were all silent. Only Mine's eyes were rolling. Why should we retreat? Mine asked puzzledly. She clearly noticed that someone was secretly following them at that time. She could take this opportunity to kill the other party and ask about the internal information of a Ning sect. Ask me why? Of course, we have to change to a more suitable place for the duel. Fighting in a spacious open area is definitely better than fighting in a narrow street. Dustless turned his head slightly, revealing half of his face. He stared at the flickering shadow. If I'm not wrong, the 4 of you think so too, right? He discovered us. The 4 Rakshasa demons who were hiding looked at each other in shock. They seemed to be very confident in their skills in hiding their aura, and all of them had an incredulous expression on their faces. I'll say it again. It's 4 against 3. There's no reason for us to lose. GD, one of the 4 Rakshasa demons, showed up. He was the strongest, so he should be the vanguard. Humph, not only did he run away, he even dared to stop and put on airs. G, the strongest of the 4 Rakshasa demons, sneered, Long time no see, Chi Tong. Thorn. Chi Tong also nodded slightly. The 2 of them had known each other for a long time. They were both members of the assassination team, but now that their positions were different, Chi Tong decisively drew his sword. Run away? You must have made a mistake. I waited for so long just for the 4 of you. I thought that you would take the initiative to launch a sneak attack, but who would have thought that you would suddenly hide like rats? Your performance is too disappointing. An assassin dares to be so arrogant? Hearing this, the members of the 4 Rakshasa demons glared at him. In the past, before the Empire was in chaos, night raids were often carried out with their tails between their legs and kept a low profile. No matter where they went, it was the same. They had to put on a meticulous disguise. Now they were so arrogant that they dared to invade. This was a naked provocation. Can you 2 deal with the 4 of them? Dustless asked Chi Tong and Mine lazily. As for Sheila. He turned his head and glanced at the city in the distance. I'll deal with the minister's son and that bollock. Damn old guy, he actually sent me to this damn place. In the luxurious palace, Sheila complained while drinking. She was quite tired of her father, Minister Ernest, and hated the current boring and monotonous life. Boom boom boom. A huge explosion rose into the sky, and then the warm palace was penetrated by someone. The cold wind along with an indifferent voice all fell into Sheila's ears. There's no need to resent him. In a month at most, you and your father, Minister Onesta, will meet again in the frying pan of hell. Who is it? Get out of here. Sheila saw the situation and shouted. He suddenly stood up decadently. His body was tall and his muscles were extremely strong and hard. He clenched his fists and looked quite intimidating. However, this inexplicable majesty only lasted for a few seconds, and it was an instant tragedy. Boom boom boom. A dazzling light came from the sky without warning. The dazzling light covered Sheila's whole body, and the blazing temperature made her feel a fatal threat. It's too dangerous. It can even track automatically? With a flash, Sheila hurriedly dodged the attack of the light. She was more than 10 meters away and thought that she could avoid the disaster. But before Sheila could even catch her breath, she was once again suppressed by the merciless flash. Boom boom boom. The strong and fierce force suddenly fell, mercilessly stepped on Sheila's head and stomped her whole body into the ground. Even the ground showed signs of cracking because of the strong force. Speed is power. Have you ever been kicked by the speed of light, Sheila? Chapter 1658. Boom boom boom. Endless rays of light whizzed toward his face. Sheila felt the deadly sharpness. His breathing was accelerated by dozens of times, and there were even bean-sized sweat drops on his forehead. Buzz buzz buzz. He subconsciously activated the taigu with his right hand. Boom boom boom. The place where Sheila stood was attacked by the light-speed kick and turned into scorched earth. The entire palace was in ruins, and the moon hanging high in the sky suddenly appeared in front of his eyes. Master Sheila. The huge vibration attracted the attention of the guards of the Anonism sect. A middle-aged man with a fat face and luxurious clothes hurried over, looking at the ruins in front of him. His face was very nervous. This person was Balak, and he was also the spy sent by Onesta to monitor the hierarch of the Anonism sect. Is this guy really here to protect me? Damn it, he better not get beaten to death. Otherwise, Minister Onesta will not let me go. Balak looked around anxiously and carefully searched for Sheila's traces. He cursed him thousands of times in his mind. After all, Sheila was Onesta's son. If he died here, Balak would be implicated as well. Of course he is fine. The ability of the taigu is not bad, it can move in space. A strange voice sounded in his ears. Balak looked over there. When he just turned his head, a thug grabbed his throat and then easily lifted Balak up. It's so uncomfortable. His neck was grabbed. Balak felt that breathing was 100 times more difficult than usual. He glanced at the culprit with tears, trying to win sympathy. But after seeing the culprit behind the scenes, his heart suddenly became weak. Dustless of the night attack? Balak's heart was cold and he was desperate. The night attack was all emotionless executioners. It was more realistic to expect them to be merciful than to pray to God. Do you know me? The indifferent face slightly relaxed. Dustless sighed. Damn, I wanted to kill you directly, but I didn't expect you to know me. Gulp. Balak choked for a moment, and suddenly there was hope for survival. Listening to Dustless's words, it seemed that he wanted to let him go. Of course I know you, your name is spread all over the capital. No, it is spread all over the world, Master Dustless. Balak flattered. He was happier than seeing his father. Do you know me? That's for the best. I don't want to waste time talking nonsense. It'll save me a lot of trouble. Dustless sighed in relief. Then please let me go, sir. I'll disappear from your sight and you won't be in any trouble. Balak said excitedly. You've misunderstood me. Dustless was startled when he heard this. Then he said coldly, you know my name. After you go to the underworld, you can give King Yama a suitable answer and know who killed you. I don't need to introduce myself. That's all. Goodbye. Crack. As soon as he finished speaking, Wuxia exerted his strength and broke Balak's neck. Damn it, you actually dared to kill him. Sheila appeared with an ashen face, the veins on his face bulging. You must die here today. Minister Onesta had asked Shira to protect Balak. Now that Shira had been killed by the night raid and there was no way to capture Dustless, even if the minister was his father, he would not have a good ending. Bring it on. Hooking his finger, Dustless threw away Balak in his hand and signaled Sheila to bring it on. Taigu a Shangri-La. Sheila shouted. The taigu in his hand shone with purple light and covered Sheila's whole body. Then his strong body evaporated and disappeared without a sign. The ability of this taigu is not bad. It's worth collecting as a toy. Dustless showed a satisfied expression. Then he opened his mouth gently and said, 90 black coffin of breaking Tao. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The Ryatsu in Dustless's body was rolling. The black light condensed and attacked from all directions. The quantity was enough to easily turn a person into a sieve. And the target of the attack was Dustless himself. It seemed that they wanted to die together with him. Puchi. 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 The horrifying sound continued, and there was a lot of blood on the ground. Impossible, it's absolutely impossible. How can you guess where I will appear? The space-type taigu is not just a simple body movement. You can't predict where I will appear. Sheila shouted in disbelief. Looking at him carefully, he was covered with bruises. There were traces of being crushed by the black coffin. The whole person was also full of holes. You're right. I can't predict where you will appear. However, don't forget that the target of your attack is only me from the beginning to the end. So as long as the target of the black coffin is set to be me, then you will naturally be involved. Dustless explained calmly. You damned bastard. Sheila heard the words and gritted his teeth. The black coffin on his body had been torn, and the blood kept flowing. It was only a matter of time before he died. If I die you will also die. Who let you set yourself as the target? After a while, Sheila laughed gloatingly. It's a good ending to die with you, haha. Really? Then I'm sorry. Although I have lived for hundreds of years, as you can see, I'm far from living enough. Opening his clothes, revealing his intact chest, Dustless explained faintly, "My body I have used armament hockey to defend before and it's intact." Pucci. Sheila, who couldn't stand the blow, spat out blood. After looking at Dustless unwillingly, he closed his eyes in despair, and was so angry that he vomited blood and died in advance. Chapter 1659. It's really sad. Glancing at Sierra indifferently, Dustless stepped over his body and left. When he was about to take away the taigu, a pair of rough big hands suddenly grabbed his right leg. "Ah! I caught it." Sierra, who closed his eyes, suddenly opened his eyes again, showing a crazy light, and the light of the extinguished taigu actually shined again. The purple light flashed unscrupulously, covering a large range. All the space that was affected was distorted, and it was deterred by a special force, revealing an indescribable ominous feeling. "You are really tough." Your heart was torn by the black coffin. Dustless did not change his expression. He knew that this guy would use the ability to calculate himself and his death last time. "Don't forget my identity, it's easy to get the enhancer. If you want to complain, you can only complain that you treat me as an ordinary human being." Sierra said proudly. His face was red, he was excited as if he had taken drugs. It was obviously a final radiance. "Really? Then I will reluctantly admit you. However, do you think this trick is useful? You sent me in his death to a different space. I still came back safe and sound." Dustless glanced at Sierra contemptuously. The space around had begun to change and appeared in a strange world, but Dustless was still unmoved. "You guy." Sierra's old face was particularly gloomy when he heard the words. Dustless was sent to another dimension. It was too strange that he could still come back. "Do you think I will do the same thing again? You underestimate me too much." Sierra suddenly changed his face and smiled. "When I traveled to the edge of the Empire, I once found a special good place. There were dangerous species everywhere, and even super dangerous species appeared." The voice just fell. The world in front of Dustless's eyes was brand new. It was originally a large ruin, but now it became a wilderness. There were weathered white bones everywhere. "Ow, ow." Immediately after, a heart-wrenching roar spread through the sky. Dustless's appearance was like a rich fragrance of honey, attracting groups of dangerous species to his over. "Haha, this is a good place, right? I've been here before. This trick was originally reserved for Generalist Death, but unfortunately that smelly old man sent me here to deal with you." Sheila looked up to the sky and laughed. She stared at Dustless, trying to capture a trace of fear. After all, this location was special. Not to mention the large number of dangerous species gathered here, there were also super dangerous species that were countless times stronger than dangerous species. In Sheila's view, Dustless was already in a state of certain death. "Why didn't you even leave a corpse for yourself?" After a moment of silence, Dustless suddenly asked such an inexplicable question, which confused Sierra. Sheila was taken aback. She said coldly, "Don't you know how to speak human language? Please say that I can understand." "Ah, it's so hot. Damn it, what's going on?" Sheila, who was lying on the ground, suddenly howled in pain. She was shocked to find that the ground was too much of a stretch. The ground that had been hard just a moment ago was all bubbling. "Is this King magma? Could it be that I'm dreaming?" Sheila rolled on the ground to relieve her pain as she looked at the ground around her in shock. His body had begun to melt and gradually disappeared. "Are you the one who did this?" Sheila gritted her teeth in pain and suddenly wished that she could die earlier. At the same time she looked at Dustless. She was sure that he was the initiator. At this moment, his appearance was very strange, and there was a dark red reincarnation Sharingan on his forehead. "I have lived for hundreds of years and I have never shown this eye on my forehead. You are the first. You are lucky but also very tragic because you won't even leave a corpse." Glancing at Sheila with a blank face, Dustless whispered, "Heaven's defense." Go. Spatial displacement. Dustless and the rest arrived at an unfamiliar world. But this world's myriad phenomena were all constructed from magma. Mountains were formed by magma, rivers were also formed by magma, and the earth was also tumbling magma. Everything in this world was made of magma. "It's so hot." With a scream, Sheila fell into the magma, including those dangerous species. They were swallowed by the super-large magma world in an instant. "This loot is not bad." Looking at the taigu in his hand, Dustless nodded with satisfaction. Among many taigu, this was the only one that he could see. Dimensional matrix, Shangri-La. Dustless was the Jubi itself. He once occupied everything of Kagaya. He could use all her techniques, but there was no suitable target to use it. Now this guy got it. 2 days later they attacked the base at night. Dustless, Mine and Akame returned safely. Unexpectedly, when they just returned to the base, they got the shocking news from the boss Najenda. Dustless also lost his mind for a while. Is Death lost? This joke is not funny at all. I still believe that Is Death will lose to Dustless. How can she lose to the useless Minister Ernest? This information is wrong. Lubbock tore the information in his hand into pieces and felt that his IQ was insulted. The news in the imperial capital was very tight, but some people saw the clues. At that time, a giant appeared in the sky of the imperial capital. It was dozens of meters high. It finally defeated Is Death, and it was still an overwhelming victory. Najenda took a smoke and then said seriously, "It is rumored that it is the strongest Taigu, the supreme Taigu that only the blood of the emperor can activate, supreme taser. Even if the little emperor really uses taser, it is impossible to crush Is Death." Dustless shook his head resolutely. He knew the strength of Is Death. She might be defeated, but it was not scientific to crush Is Death. Chapter 1660. Of course, the form of the battlefield was constantly changing, there was no absoluteness. Sometimes a moment of carelessness may lead to a complete loss, this kind of thing was everywhere. And thinking carefully, it was not impossible for Is Death to be defeated. Anyway, the intelligence clearly points out that Is Death was defeated. Najenda deepened her tone. No matter how ridiculous it was the fact. That Taigu, supreme taser, is very powerful. Dustless touched his chin and said, he looked quite scared. If one ignored his playful and eager smile, perhaps everyone would think so. However, there was a hint of anticipation on his face. It was obvious that he wanted to challenge him and was not afraid at all. I am afraid that Is Death's Taigu was sealed by Minister Ernest, otherwise she would not be defeated. Dustless secretly guessed. In the original work, Leonette was a living example. Her Taigu was sealed. If Is Death also lost her Taigu, then her strength would definitely be greatly reduced. She was defeated by the most powerful Taigu, supreme taser, with overwhelming strength. It could be barely justified. Then I will announce a new order. Blowing a smoke ring heavily, Najenda looked serious and said surprisingly, Is Death, that guy, is going to cooperate with us? It's impossible? Lubbock and others exclaimed. They were shocked by Najenda's words. Jaegers was the enemy of the night raid. They had no reason to surrender, especially many members of Jaegers were killed by the night raid. The original prediction was right. Dustless smiled and did not have much surprise. He said easily, if Is Death is defeated, it is reasonable for her to cooperate with us. After all, everyone's enemy is the Empire. Is Death can't deal with the Empire alone. It is reasonable to jump into the same trench with us. What about Kurome? Akame asked nervously. Jaegers also chose to join us in the night raid. Najenda smiled excitedly. She couldn't digest this big pie for a while. With Is Death and her Jaegers, overthrowing the Empire was inevitable. Kurome? Chi-Tong also had a surprised smile on her face when she heard this. Her smile was as gentle as the light, giving people the feeling that she had eaten honey. It was obvious that Chi-Tong had a special place in her heart. Let's get ready and meet with Is Death after 3 hours. In the dense forest that stretched as far as the eye could see, there were a few exhausted figures sitting on the gravel. They were the Hunter Special Police who were currently in danger. I can't believe that I actually lost. Losing to Dustless is one thing, but I actually lost to that useless minister and the puppet emperor, damn it. Cruelty flashed in Is Death's eyes and her self-esteem was hit. Now there were only 3 hunters left. One was Is Death, the other was Kurome and Will. The rest of the members had all fallen in the previous battle. Miss Is Death, your embarrassed expression is really wonderful. I feel that I can eat 10 more bowls of food when I go back. A voice full of banter suddenly came, and in the jungle there were several strange breaths. Are they here? Hearing this cynical voice, Is Death knew that the old enemy was here, Dustless. Through the dense leaves, the silhouettes that came out of the darkness were Dustless, Chi-Tong, Leonette, and the boss Najenda. As for the others, they were all ambushed secretly. Once Is Death had abnormal behavior, they would immediately eliminate them. Long time no see, Is Death. Najenda glared at Dustless, which meant that he should not make trouble, and immediately walked to Isteth politely and shook hands with her. As I expected, Isteth's Taigu was sealed, so it is normal for her to lose to the little emperor. The Taigu symbol between Isteth's two chests had disappeared at the moment. Dustless looked at Isteth carefully, and the appreciation on his face was not hidden. Without the ability of Taigu, she could still take two subordinates with her own strength to escape from the Supreme Taigu, Supreme Taser. What Isteth did was commendable. Qurome. Sister? Both Chi Tong and Qurome looked at each other complicatedly. From the enemy to the ally in the same trench, the two sisters seemed to be difficult to accept for a while. Najenda, let's work together. When attacking the capital, I am willing to be the first to fight until the breath is completely lost. With a wave of her hand, Isteth announced with a domineering momentum. But these words fell into Dustless's ears. It was tantamount to looking for death. Without Taigu, if she wanted to fight with the Taigu Supreme Taser alone, wasn't this looking for death? This is the best, we will definitely win. Also, it's late, temporarily return to the night raid base to make a long-term plan. Najenda nodded like a chicken and finally invited Isteth to dinner. It was better to rest in the night raid base and get closer to each other. This was an indispensable ally. Although Isteth's strength was now greatly reduced, the only one who dared to say that he could crush her in the night raid was Dustless. Moreover, even if Isteth suddenly attacked, Najenda did not care. Anyway, Dustless could subdue her, there was nothing to be afraid of. By the way, I have always wanted to ask a question. At this time, Dustless suddenly interrupted and asked a very sensitive question, so that Isteth and Najenda were both stiff. The relatively harmonious scene was made rather awkward by Dustless for a while. Chapter 1661. Our alliance. Does the Revolutionary Army know the news? Staring at Najenda and Isteth's face, Dustless said without thinking. Isteth is the big enemy of the Revolutionary Army. Najenda, if we form an alliance rashly, there may be a big problem. Don't worry about it for the time being, I will take full responsibility for the problem. Najenda replied frankly, intending to take all the blame. Isteth was the strongest sadist general of the empire. The Revolutionary Army was killed by her. The Revolutionary Army also hated Isteth. Seeing the victory in hand, the Revolutionary Army would never join forces with such a sinner. As you like. Dustless couldn't say much. After all, this was the choice of the boss, Najenda. Although he felt that this behavior was digging a hole for himself, Dustless still chose to respect her will. At most, he would help Najenda once at a critical moment. Put on. At this moment, an unexpected figure suddenly fell to the ground and fainted with a very haggard look. Qurome. Chi Tong hurriedly ran to Qurome's side and held her tightly in his arms. He raised his voice several times and stared at Qurome, trying not to let go of every inch of her skin, for fear that he would miss a wound. Her body has been hollowed out. Looking down at Qurome, who fell in Akhame's arms, Dustless sighed with regret. After a series of battles before, I am afraid that she will die soon. Qurome. This sentence was like thunder for Akhame. She was stunned instantly, her jade hand trembled and stroked Qurome's cheek, her throat was choked up. Fate is really cruel. Witnessing such a scene, everyone's faces were bleak, and there was a feeling of sadness. Witnessing the departure of their companions, sometimes, they couldn't help but think about their own future. Especially Akhame's desperate eyes were even more unforgettable. Do you need to be so sad? Although I said that she will die soon, I didn't say that she can't be saved. It was very discordant, but it made Akhame happy. Can you really do it? Dustless. Chi Tong grabbed Dustless excitedly. He couldn't help but grab Dustless's hands and place them on his chest. Feeling the scorching heat, Chi Tong's despairing heart was ignited once again. Cough cough. Dustless's face stiffened slightly, and he hurriedly withdrew his hands from Chi Tong's grasp. She had placed them in the wrong position and they were too close. Even though they were separated by clothes, Dustless could still feel their delicate touch. It wasn't Dustless's fault, but Chi Tong's career line was too majestic. It's just a small matter. If it's Tatsumi, I can't save him. If it's your sister, even if her head is separated, I will make her come back to life. Does this bastard know how to speak properly? Why does he have to drag me into this every time? Tatsumi, who was hiding in the dark, was so angry that he stomped his feet. Every time he was so miserable. Even if he didn't offend Dustless, he was still inexplicably tricked by this guy. Could it be that this guy is omnipotent? Glancing at Dustless with a complicated look, Death looked lonely. She used to have the hope of surpassing Dustless. Now after losing the power of Taigu, her confidence was also annihilated, and now it was gone with the wind. She used to fantasize about keeping Dustless as a pet, but now it seemed that there was no chance in this life. In the base of the night attack, Najenda and Death had something to talk about. Dustless, Chi Tong and her sister were closed in a special room with only one bed. The person lying on the operating table was Kurom. Crack. Dustless's sudden move made Chi Tong very nervous. She saw that Chi Tong broke Kurom's clothes, revealing her petite body. Damn Empire. Chi Tong clenched her fists tightly. At first, she thought that Wu Chen was going to take advantage of her. It was not until she lifted her clothes that she realized that Chi Tong's abdomen was pitch black, like a rotten corpse. This was the sequelae of long-term injection of drugs. Yin-Yang release is a very magical ninjutsu. It not only has amazing attack power, but also can create something out of nothing and create a new organ. Even if Kurom's internal organs collapse and some parts of her body are close to rot, as long as you help her create a new body, she can recover safely, Dustless explained while treating Kurom's overwhelmed body. Especially the abdomen was the most obvious place. The dark, rotten and terrible epidermis was brand new and condensed into the bright skin. Can human beings and Taiga do this kind of thing? Chi Tong's heart was pounding. She witnessed Hei Tong's gradually recovering and her cheeks were rosy. She had a blind admiration for Wu Chen. The thin young man in front of her could be said to be an omnipotent existence. There was nothing that he couldn't think of, but nothing he couldn't do. I will wipe your sweat for you. Such an ability must be very energy-consuming. Chi Tong carefully wiped the sweat for Dustless. Looking at the face close at hand, her heart trembled inexplicably. Ah! Noticing that Chi Tong was staring at him without blinking, Dustless patted her on the shoulder and explained to himself, after so many years I have already reached the level of controlling and using yin-yang release. It doesn't consume energy. At the same time, Kurom, who was in a coma, slowly opened her eyes and found the most shocking scene in her life. Chi Tong's face was close to Dustless's cheek. Her eyes were empty as if she was possessed by a devil. No one knew what she was thinking. Even because they were too close to each other, they could feel the heat of each other's breath. Chapter 1662. The two looked around, and the atmosphere fell into an unprecedented strange silence. Is it possible that Scarlet Pupil is fascinated by my aggressiveness? On the surface he was indifferent, but Dustless was happy in his heart, and he couldn't help but daydream. In the original work, Tatsumi could fool Scarlet Pupil. Dustless did not think that he was worse than Tatsumi. Whether it was strength, charm or other aspects, Dustless thought that he was better than Tatsumi. Which was more popular, a hero or a bear? There was no doubt that it was the former, and Dustless belonged to the former. Although Tatsumi was good, compared with Dustless he could only be a bear. At this time I should take Scarlet Pupil into my arms, and then, hee. Dustless raised a slanted smile at the corner of his mouth, and his hand could not help but reach out to Scarlet Pupil's waist. Boom boom boom. Before Dustless completely made a move, the earth-shattering sound of the cannon resounded throughout the imperial capital. Kurom also recovered from her sluggishness and realized that Dustless was so close to her. Her pretty face turned red and she instantly retracted her neck. Which blind bastard is it that's spouting nonsense? Dustless turned around and the roaring sound landed beside him. If Dustless didn't dodge quickly, he was afraid that he would eat a mouthful of soil. At the same time, the new base of the night raid was subjected to large-scale artillery bombardment. Boom boom boom. The earth-shattering roar of the cannons lasted for more than 10 minutes before it stopped. The base of the night raid had turned into a pile of rubble. Fortunately, everyone had hidden in the first place, so there were no major problems and they had escaped this fatal attack. Who the hell attacked us? Looking at the ruins of the scorched earth, Boss Najenda was furious. She was discussing the secret plan to attack the imperial capital with his death. Who knew that the artillery bombardment came from the sky? There is no doubt that this is definitely not the Empire. His death was decisive and sure. She had been fighting for a long time and was very familiar with artillery. Then there is only one possibility. These people who ambushed us. Maybe everyone is very surprised, but it seems that there is only one possibility. The people who ambushed us are the Revolutionary Army. Dustless said something shocking. Impossible. Not only the boss Najenda, but also the other members were full of doubts. They all denied Dustless's ridiculous idea. After all, they belonged to the Revolutionary Army. How could their own people attack their own people? However, Isthetha's eyes had a strange luster. After hearing Dustless's answer, she did not rush to deny it like others. She knew that Dustless was not the kind of person who spoke without thinking. After thinking carefully for a while, she decisively stood on the side of Dustless and nodded. Although I don't want to admit it, so far, only the Revolutionary Army can gather so many troops. The imperial capital is now going to collapse and everyone is in danger. Not to mention that there is no such elite force. Even if there is, Minister Onesta will definitely use it to protect the imperial capital. Isthetha's analysis was orderly, and what she said was reasonable. Everyone intended to refute, but there was no corresponding plan. If the imperial capital couldn't do it, only the most powerful revolutionary army could do it. Boom, boom, boom. And the next hysterical roar spread through the void and fell into the ears of all the members of the night raid. Kill these damn traitors, they even colluded with Isthetha behind the revolutionary army, they deserve to be killed. Kill all the traitors, kill the men, kill the women. Ah. The new country doesn't need garbage like the night raid, let's kill them together. All kinds of angry voices came out from the mouths of the Black Shadows. Najenda and other members of the night raid were shocked. They didn't expect the well-trained revolutionary army to be so disgusting at the moment. They were no different from the garbage of the empire. You don't have to be surprised, I have told you before. With the passage of time, no matter what material it is, it will slowly decay and age, it can't escape the carving of time. The empire is no exception, and the rising revolutionary army is no exception. Fighting with each other is the nature of human beings, it will never perish unless all the human beings in the world can be destroyed. Dustless said, his tone was particularly persuasive. It was like the beginning of the empire, it was also honest, but with the passage of time, it was also old and dirty. Damn it. Are we just going to wait helplessly for death? I'm not reconciled. Under everyone's surprised gaze, Mine decisively raised her taigu. Why don't you give me a chance to explain? Do you have to fight with me? Najenda looked sad, she did not expect the revolutionary army to hate Isthetha so much. No, don't you understand? This is not the reason of Isthetha. Dustless noticed that Lubbock and Tatsumi stared at Isthetha with a slightly disgusted look, and explained the reason in one sentence. Our night raid is the dark side of the revolutionary army. All the evil things are done by us, so this group of guys wants to kill us and then push the blame to the night raid. When the voice fell, the faces of the members of the night raid all changed. They were desperate to the revolutionary army in an instant. They paid for the revolution wholeheartedly. They did not expect that this group of benevolent revolutionary army was so vicious at the moment. They treated the night raid as a chess piece. Perhaps the basic purpose was, as Dustless said, they used his death as an excuse to wipe out the night raid. All the darkness of the new country was the scapegoat of the night raid, and the revolutionary army could wash themselves clean. By the way, everyone seems to have a huge loophole that has been selectively forgotten. The new base of the night raid was exposed, don't you think it's strange? Chapter 1663. Why was the base exposed? All the members were stunned, then they nodded as if they woke up from a dream. Due to the sudden betrayal of the revolutionary army, everyone was tangled in the issue of the revolutionary army for a while and ignored this crucial issue. The previous night raid was attacked by Isthetha, and the original base was reduced to scorched ruins. Now the new base was changed, the boss Najenda did not rush to inform the revolutionary army. Then the question came? How did the revolutionary army know? There is a traitor among us. Stretching, Dustless told the amazing truth, and at the same time, his eyes swept across the faces of the members of the night raid, and a special figure came into view. Tatsumi? At this moment of depression, Dustless suddenly called out Tatsumi's name. What's with your eyes? What do you want to express? Do you suspect that I am the traitor? Tatsumi was angry and yelled at Dustless. Please pay attention to your wording, remember to have evidence, otherwise it is just false accusation. It didn't matter what Wu Qin said, but everyone looked at Tatsumi. What are you nervous about? I just called your name, I didn't seem to say that you are the traitor who betrayed us. Dustless slightly loosened his shoulders and showed a guilty expression. You are insinuating. Tatsumi had been cheated by Dustless so many times that he had a shadow in his heart. We will talk about these things later, at present, we have defeated the revolutionary army temporarily. The boss Najenda pinched the cigarette, but she also knew that there was a mole in the night raid at the moment. Tsk, you are really decisive, Najenda? Isteth touched her chin and was quite surprised. She didn't expect Najenda to turn hostile. There is nothing to be surprised about, I can't take everyone's life. Najenda waved her hand, and then all the members of the night raid were dispatched this time. The only difference was that the target of the attack was no longer the decaying empire, but the revolutionary army. Time passed by, about an hour or so, the night raid successfully repelled the invading revolutionary army, and their own losses were minimal or even negligible. In the evening, everyone rushed back to the base looking exhausted. Being stabbed in the back by one's own people was not only physically tiring, but also a heavy blow to one's spirit. No one would be able to accept the fact that their faith had suddenly betrayed them one day, and they would even feel resentment. We are in the same boat now, Najenda? Isteth crossed her long white legs and sat lazily on the sofa. She held a wine glass in her hand and gently shook the red liquid in the glass elegantly. Gulp. Then Isteth drank it up and praised, "Not bad, the taste is very special and the taste is very mellow. I didn't expect you to have such a good wine in the night raid. Najenda, bring me a few more bottles. This smell is somewhat familiar." Smelling the remaining fragrance in the air, Dustless looked at Isteth, and his expression suddenly froze. "Miss Isteth, the wine tastes good, but I want to know where you got it?" "I got it in the kitchen. I took it when I met it, but it's strange that it's only half a bottle." Isteth blurted out. Then she looked at Dustless in surprise and seemed to understand something. She smiled proudly and poured the bottle into her mouth, and she did not forget to satirize, "Dustless, don't even think about drinking, this is the last bit. If you want a drink, you can take my bottle and lick it." After the voice fell, Isteth poured all the remaining red liquid in the bottle into her mouth. You misunderstood me." Dustless heard the words and immediately said helplessly, "Miss Isteth, I forgot to tell you just now, your half bottle of wine is actually what I drank yesterday, and you are so hungry, do you like my saliva so much?" Pucci. Isteth, who was still proud, suddenly changed her face. All the red wine that she had just swallowed into her lungs was sprayed out. Her face was gloomy and gloomy. In particular, Dustless's sentence, "Do you like my saliva so much?" was particularly harsh in Isteth's ears. "Do you think I will believe such vulgar jokes?" Isteth asked with a pale face. At this moment Scarlet Eye suddenly stood up and interrupted and said with a red face, "Miss Isteth, Dustless is telling the truth. This wine was bought by him and me in the capital for a mission, and we were going to—" Speaking of this, Scarlet Eye was more embarrassed and said embarrassedly, "Dustless said that he was going to use it for Tatsumi, and he also put special seasoning in it." Grumble. At the same time, Isteth's stomach growled very cooperatively. "You win." Aware of the abnormality of her body, Isteth glared at Dustless and quickly ran to the bathroom. "What did you put in it?" Tatsumi asked with a chill all over his body. "It's just a few packs of laxatives." Dustless's face was full of pity. His intention was to kill Tatsumi, but who knew that the greediest death would take it away? "Well, what do you think of the traitor inside?" Najenda clenched her hands into fists, and her tone was obviously angry and a little murderous. "Boss, don't worry, I have found the evidence of the behind-the-scenes manipulator." Dustless smiled mysteriously, and the curve of his mouth was full of deep meaning. "Are you sure?" Najenda and others asked in surprise. A traitor was hiding in the dark and staring at their activities. Thinking of it, everyone had a lingering fear and uneasiness. They couldn't help but have goosebumps. This sense of oppression was far greater than the deterrence of the enemy. Only ghosts knew when this secret snake would stab them. They were not afraid of a godlike enemy, but they were afraid of a pig-like teammate. Chapter 1664. At night, the sky gradually became cold and everyone went back to sleep one after another. In Dustless's bedroom, he was lying lazily on the quilt, his eyes were rolling and his deep black eyes were full of cunning. Who was the undercover this time? In fact, Dustless didn't know, or it was just a coincidence. There was no suspicious person inside the night attack, and it could barely be understood as a coincidence that the Revolutionary Army discovered the night attack on the new base. Hee. It's a pity not to take advantage of such a good opportunity. Dustless smiled grimly, and his cheeks flashed a gloomy murderous look. If there was no opportunity, he could create it. Dustless could take advantage of this opportunity to kill Tatsumi and put the blame on him. What's more, Tatsumi has this motive, Dustless murmured coldly, and he made up his mind to push all the causes and consequences to Tatsumi. It was better to kill this eyesore. Creak. It was also at this time that Dustless suddenly heard the sound of the door being pushed open, and he immediately pretended to be asleep, and then he saw the hockey spread out like water ripples. It seems to be his death. Even with his eyes closed, Dustless felt who it was from the unique temperament. The closed eyes opened, and the person who appeared in the eyes was Isdeath in pajamas. No, it was too much to say that it was pajamas. Isdeath's white underwear was open, her proud cleavage was exposed, and most of her 2 huge meatballs could be seen clearly. What's the matter? You weren't seen when you came, right? Maybe I'll be gossiped about. Also, you're not retaliating against me, are you? So are you ready to be humiliated by me again? Dustless stared at Isdeath's delicate face and asked. You know the answer, don't talk nonsense, didn't you expect this scene? The day I begged you, I remember you said it last time. Isdeath snorted softly. Did I? Dustless pretended to widen his eyes innocently and scratched his head embarrassedly, as if to say that he didn't know anything. You're too forgetful. Isdeath sat on the quilt, staring at Dustless with her watery eyes and said, Lend me your strength and I can help you do everything you want to do. Is that why you joined the night raid, to get close to me? Isdeath nodded and crossed her arms. Why do you think I joined the night raid? Don't tell me. Do you think I've been influenced? This kind of thinking was very naive. The Empire was not a good thing, and so was the Revolutionary Army. The winner could decide everything. Evil and justice are not important, the key is power. Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He really thought that Isdeath wanted to repent. Who knew that this girl joined the Night Raid assassin organization in order to get close to him? You are right, the winner can decide everything. The key is that you are just a stray dog now, you don't even have the ability of Taigu, how can you talk about winning? It's too funny. Dustless raised his tone deliberately to attack Isdeath. That's why I came to you for help. Isdeath blinked and said with a serious expression, Give me the power to destroy them. From now on we are allies. No, Dustless shook his head quickly and sneered, Mrs. Death, do you really think others are fools? My power can give you stronger strength, but do you want to get something for nothing? Don't you think you are too ridiculous? You want to get my power without paying? There is no such cheap thing in the world. If you want to get my power, you must come up with the conditions that I am interested in. That's right. Isdeath lowered her head without saying yes or no. If you want to get other people's things, who will be fooled if you don't give bait? What's more, Dustless was not the kind of idiot who had a lot of money. After thinking for a while, under Dustless's surprised gaze, Isdeath made an amazing move. The almost transparent pajamas as thin as a cicada's wing was cut from Isdeath's delicate body. The delicate skin and the body that made people daydream were all exposed in the sight of Dustless. The body that made people commit crimes could be seen at a glance. It attracted the nerves of Dustless. Cough, cough. Dustless was slightly stunned after seeing this, his face flashed with embarrassment, and he reluctantly took back his sight. Give me power, this body is yours, you can do whatever you want, I will never resist. Finally, Isdeath approached Dustless and blew a hot breath in his ear. You can do whatever you want, I will fully cooperate with you. Since you think so clearly, then I will agree with you this deal. Staring at Isdeath's clear eyes, Dustless snapped his fingers, then a strange fruit appeared in his hand. It was the devil fruit, and it was the ice-cold fruit of Logia. What is this? Don't tell me that it can let me regain the strength of the past. Isdeath pointed to the devil fruit with suspicion. Eat it, you will get the previous strength, no, to be exact, you will get the strength beyond the previous. Akiji's ice-cold fruit is far more powerful than the Taigu. Demon God's manifestation, devil's essence. Dustless explained, staring at Isdeath and said, But there is a condition, you must promise me, otherwise everything is in vain and what I said before does not count. My body? You can take it. Isdeath said calmly, the concept of the weak being prey to the strong had already been deeply rooted. For her, the weak deserved to be dominated by the strong. Not this. Dustless stared at Isdeath angrily. She thought he was crazy. Dustless walked to Isdeath's side and said something to her in a low voice. After a while, Isdeath, who understood, had a strange expression. Are you sure you want to do this? Chapter 1665. It was no wonder that Isdeath was so strange. Dustless's request was to join hands to kill Tatsumi. Does that kind of small character need my cooperation? Isdeth was puzzled. She did not expect Dustless to make such a fuss. There was no need to know a small character. After all, he was just a small character. Tell me. After thinking for a while, Isdeth did not refuse in a hurry. Come closer. Dustless smiled and let Isdeth come closer. Finally he told her his plan. After listening to it, Isdeth was immediately embarrassed. No wonder Tatsumi hates you so much. If it were me, maybe I would die with you. Isdeth rubbed her temple and looked at Dustless with a hopeless look. So what? Dustless curled his lips and did not care about Isdeth's contempt. He asked directly, So Mrs. Death, what is your choice? I promise you. After a little hesitation, Isdeth gritted her teeth and agreed to Dustless's condition. Take it. Dustless smiled slightly, then handed the ice-cold fruit in his hand to Isdeth and said lazily, Repeat again, this is the ice-cold fruit of Logia. Its ability is far more powerful than Demon God's appearance, Devil's essence. Its ability is also as its name, it can freeze all creatures or non-matter. The scale is more powerful than Taigu, but how powerful it is depends on the host. Do you mean this fruit is called devil fruit? Isdeth's eyes were full of light. She was quite curious about this strange fruit. It was the first time to encounter such a special fruit in her life. Yes, I am the flash person who ate the flash fruit. Most of the physical attacks do not work on me. This devil fruit also has the same ability, it can be immune to most of the physical attacks and it can grew. However, before Dustless finished speaking, Isdeth grabbed the ice-cold fruit. She was afraid that Dustless would regret, so she simply swallowed the fruit into her mouth. Fuck, aren't you afraid of choking? Dustless stared at Isdeth speechlessly. He did not expect her to act so fast. Woo woo woo, a strange sound came out of Isdeth's mouth. Although it was not clear what she was saying, the general meaning could be seen from her proud face. What if you regret it? How do you feel? Do you feel any changes in your physique? Dustless changed the topic and asked with interest. It's disgusting. Isdeth had a bitter look on her face. Her delicate face had turned into a bitter gourd color. It seemed that she had suffered a lot. You're still complaining? Glaring at Isdeth snappily, Wuxia scolded, This is a priceless treasure, it's disgusting. Before he finished speaking, a cold light surged out of Isdeth's body. Ka. The entire room instantly turned into a world of ice and snow, and the cold aura lowered the surrounding temperature by hundreds of degrees. Not bad. Feeling the changes in her body, Isdeth was pleasantly surprised. She lost her power and regained it. Especially when she gained more power than before, she was extremely happy. Then with a slight thought, the cold air emitted from Isdeth's body calmed down. Good control, is it because you have been playing with ice for a long time? Dustless's eyes flashed with surprise and he smiled with satisfaction. Although it is not as good as Akiji for the time being, it should be no problem to surpass him. Who is this Akiji you are talking about? Is he also a person with this ice-cold fruit ability? Isdeth blinked and asked curiously. Yes, but to be exact, he is your predecessor, he is dead. Dustless waved and said, and immediately stared at Isdeth with aggressive eyes. I remember you just said that if I let you regain your former strength, your body will be mine, right? In that case it would be impolite for me to decline. Staring at the fragrant Isdeth, Dustless did not hesitate to rush up. At first he thought that Isdeth would resist. Unexpectedly, this girl not only did not refuse, but also showed a different kind of wildness. She wanted to counterattack Dustless and press Dustless under her body. After a short period of absent-mindedness, Dustless naturally would not let Isdeth do as she wished, and he suppressed Isdeth strongly. The next morning, when Dustless and Isdeth opened their eyes, it was almost noon of the next day. What a shameless night. The bright sunshine sprinkled into the room. Dustless subconsciously blocked the light with his hand, and looked at the outside world through the weak gap between his 5 fingers. Is it noon? Dustless just got up and put on his clothes, but the soft and boneless arms hugged him tightly. What's the matter, Isdeth? Staring at the delicate face, an inexplicable tiredness swept through his heart. Dustless retracted the quilt again and hugged the plump body in his arms. With his eyes closed, Dustless said casually, Remember, you have to cooperate with me to kill Tatsumi, and push the identity of undercover to him. This is the content of the deal, I will fulfill it even if you don't say it. Isdeth lay lazily on Wuqian's body. Both of them didn't have clothes to cover their bodies and they were naked. I have a new plan. Isdeth's eyes flashed with slyness and she said straightforwardly, You are too strong, I seem to be no match for you in the end, no matter how hard I try. This is true in all aspects. Isdeth finally added a sentence full of deep meaning. Until now, her body was still painful, and there were obvious claw marks on her white skin. It's good that you know. Holding his head, Dustless smiled. So, speaking of this, Isdeth became more sly, holding Dustless's neck. Let's have a baby and use your genes to defeat you. Is this a good plan? Chapter 1666. It's too vulgar. Staring at Isdeth's eyes, Dustless mocked her unceremoniously. The idea is beautiful, but the reality is often the opposite. But it's understandable that you can think so. Although this method is brainless, it's the only way out. So be it. Dustless gave a barely good evaluation. His direct descendants would inherit one of his many powers, such as chakra or some dojutsu. Until now, his 2 daughters were the same. Then let's have a happy baby. Dustless, who was going to get up, was suddenly tired after Isdeth's torment. He returned to the bed again and pressed Isdeth down. This arrogant woman must not be merciful. When he got up again, it was already sunset and the sky was faintly dark. These 2 guys. At dinner, everyone found the abnormality of Isdeth and Dustless. They didn't say much and didn't make unnecessary explanations, but some careful people still saw the clues. Could it be? Staring at Isdeth's face, Boss Nagenda's face was strange. Isdeth walked lightly and even swayed. Compared with the indifference in the past, Isdeth now had a trace of unconcealable seductiveness. Dustless is really capable, he can even deceive Isdeth into his bed. Nagenda stared at Dustless and whispered, secretly giving him a thumbs up. By the way, who is the traitor among us? I will absolutely forgive him. Nagenda patted the table seriously. Everyone was stunned and sighed that the main dish was coming. Everyone's eyes also looked at Dustless tacitly. Of course it is. Dustless smiled maliciously and the strange sight fell on Tatsumi again. Gulp. Tatsumi's heart suddenly thumped and he said angrily, Dustless, remember it clearly, I will repeat it again, don't look at me with this kind of suspicious eyes, the person who betrayed the night raid is not me. Who else could it be but you? Ignoring Tatsumi's quibble, Dustless cleared his throat and shamelessly pushed all the blame to Tatsumi. The person who betrayed us and revealed the news to the Revolutionary Army is Tatsumi. You're framing me? Tatsumi blushed and refuted. If it's me, please give us a suitable evidence before you say it. That's right. To catch a thief we must have evidence. All the members, including Boss Nagenda, nodded and looked at Dustless, expecting him to show strong evidence. Isdeth, take that out for everyone to see. Dustless gave Isdeth a look and the latter nodded immediately. Under everyone's surprised gaze, she immediately took out the decisive evidence. Slander. This is slander. You 2 are working together to frame me. Looking at the evidence presented by Isdeth, Tatsumi was like a furious lion and lost his usual calmness. What if this super big pit fell on his head? He must not admit it. What's more, he didn't do it. Following Isdeth's gaze, he saw that she took out a stack of thick envelopes. The general content was the details of Tatsumi's betrayal of the night raid. It doesn't matter if you don't admit it. I have a way to try. Dustless stared at Tatsumi with a smile, he could only take a step back. This thing was just fabricated out of thin air, but it was not convincing enough. However, this was enough. Dustless just needed an excuse. I have an ability to extract other people's memory and put it on you to experiment. Suddenly, Dustless's mouth raised an extremely evil arc. The people whose memory was extracted by Rinnegan would eventually have the same result, either fall or become an idiot. You can do this kind of thing? Everyone was stunned when they heard the words, but Akame nodded thoughtfully and said without thinking, I remember that Dustless used this ability before. Tatsumi, you can experiment with it. Anyway, it's okay. Experiment? I'm not a lab rat. Tatsumi complained in his heart and did not hesitate to curse Akame. He immediately shook his head like a rattled drum and said loudly, I'm sorry, I refuse. Tatsumi's tone was very firm. Being a lab rat was not this group of people. Of course, it didn't matter what he said. What if something went wrong in the end? And the relationship between Dustless and himself? Thinking of this, Tatsumi shuddered. Although Akame said that there was no danger, what if there was an accident? Don't worry, at most you will become an idiot. Wu Chen's casual words made Tatsumi feel dizzy. At the moment, Tatsumi was furious. It's easy for you to say. In a word, I refuse. Refuse? A cold voice sounded from behind Tatsumi. Turning around, it was Death, who was extremely gloomy. Don't you understand now? No matter what, you're the most suspicious. Nonsense, I have never colluded with the Revolutionary Army, I haven't even seen their faces. Tatsumi argued and suddenly felt that he was very sad. He worked hard for the Revolutionary Army, but he didn't even see the Revolutionary Army's face. It was really a huge tragedy. If there are people who are against joining forces with me, is there anyone else besides you? Death held her shoulders with both hands and said disdainfully, after all, Bullet died in the hands of my subordinates, it is normal for you to hate me. Chapter 1667. Tatsumi's pupils widened, he didn't expect these two guys to cooperate so well. The tacit understanding was speechless. It was true that he hated Death because this guy killed Tatsumi. Of course, if Tatsumi knew that Death was actually just an innocent scapegoat, and the real culprit who killed Bullet was Dustless, he would definitely be choked to death. I want evidence. Again, I refuse to cooperate with the extraction of memory. Tatsumi turned his head and ignored Dustless and Death. Only idiots would cooperate. Extracting memory meant that all secrets would be controlled by Dustless. How could this be? This guy. The members of the night raid looked at each other and were secretly annoyed with Tatsumi's behavior. This guy gave people a feeling that he would not accept any conditions. Tatsumi, there is no way if you don't cooperate. Boss Najenda threw away the long smoke in her hand and stared at Tatsumi with bright eyes. Boss, do you also think that I am not a spy? I am so touched. Tatsumi was surprised when he heard the words, and his face showed a cheerful smile. Listening to Najenda's words, it seemed that she was going to let him go and stop the absurd practice of extracting memory. At the same time he looked at Dustless, which meant, look, the boss is still on my side in the end. Favoritism. What's the strength of this guy? Why does Najenda pay so much attention to him? Dustless glanced at Najenda with a complicated expression, then he stared at Tatsumi for a few times with an unlucky expression. After fighting for so long, I finally won a round. It's not easy. Tatsumi laughed in his heart and had a feeling of exultation. He excitedly walked to Boss Najenda. When Tatsumi was about to flatter her, Najenda grabbed his shoulder very abnormally. Tatsumi, I know you are wronged, but now is a special time. I hope you can be wronged, so, please let Dustless extract your memory. Najenda suddenly changed her face and said very seriously, don't worry, except for you who didn't betray everyone, other members will also have their memory extracted. Tatsumi stared straight at Najenda. Originally he had intended to flatter her. After hearing these words, 100,000 crows flew over his forehead. He was in a bad mood and almost lost control of his spirit. I firmly object. Tatsumi rebuked loudly and pursed his mouth with a constipated look. He just planned to flatter Najenda, but she betrayed him in the next second. Dustless, come and work. Boss Najenda looked at Dustless. Tatsumi's feelings, pointed at him and said, be quick, the next person whose memory is extracted will be Lubbock. Don't worry, leave it in 1 minute. Tatsumi's Najenda, and Tatsumi with Tatsumi and step. Tatsumi's head was dizzy, and his mind was spinning. What he heard was not 1 minute, but 1 minute to turn himself into a super idiot. In fact, Dustless did plan to destroy this guy's spirit and make him a retard. Let go of me. Tatsumi suddenly smashed Najenda's hand, looked at the glass window, and jumped out without hesitation under everyone's stunned gaze. Catch Tatsumi quickly, don't let him run away, this kid is guilty. Boss Najenda's face was replaced by a fierce look after the corner of her mouth twitched. Then other members of the night raid as well as Boss Najenda, all joined the task of arresting Tatsumi. This is really a disaster. It seems that it is not in your plan. I remember that you just planned to turn Tatsumi into an idiot, but this kid ran away. Death sat lazily on the sofa, looking up at the ceiling. The snow-white meatball almost broke out of her clothes. No, this is better. Although it is a little different from my plan, the ending is more perfect. Dustless suddenly smiled strangely and said in a cold voice, in this way, even if I kill Tatsumi by accident, others have nothing to say. Death raised her head and snorted, despicable man. Despicable? Dustless's calm eyes fell on Death's head, nodded and agreed, maybe, but it is very despicable. But often despicable people laugh at the end, right? For example, Minister Ernest. That makes sense. Death nodded after a slight silence. It was because Minister Ernest was despicable enough that he lived freely and killed all his political enemies. Do it, don't let them beat you. If you meet Tatsumi, kill him for me, don't show mercy. After the voice fell, Dustless's body disappeared. He turned into a ray of light and went straight to the distant sky. In an instant he surpassed Najenda and others and followed Tatsumi closely. He chased after Tatsumi and constantly narrowed the distance between the two sides. Today's Tatsumi was not the same as before. The degree of control of Ghost Haunt was also perfect. It was not the peak, but at least he could perfectly hide his breath. After he launched the stealth skill, the members of the Night Raid instantly became blind. Even if Tatsumi was beside everyone, they could not perceive his existence. Sure enough, the Night Raid is still not suitable for me. I should go inside the Revolutionary Army. It is more suitable for me. After becoming a big official, I can also change the future of the village. Now that the boss and the Revolutionary Army have parted ways, the Revolutionary Army must be lacking a master like me. With such an idea, Tatsumi rushed to the base of the Revolutionary Army, but ignored the flash behind him. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.